Thank you all for being here this evening. Sorry that we're starting a little late. I totally forgot that I was supposed to be starting a meeting. Board, you have the agenda in front of you, and if you don't have one, there's some on the back podium back there. I don't see anything. Oh, I do want to make a point. Go ahead on your agendas and scratch out item 7.5, the Student Advisory Council. Scratch that. We're going to do it next month. There's some documents that I wanted to attach to it that I forgot to, didn't get to do. All right, I believe first item under new business would be finance.
Good evening, board members. We have your budget amendments on the agenda. Happy to review any of those as you would like. Additionally, we have the financial reports attached. So we'll go over the budget amendments first. Is there anything you want pulled out for questioning there?
Any concerns in the budget amendments? Seeing none, I think we're good to go.
Okay.
Move them all to consent. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Heads are nodding.
Your monthly financials are attached. The sales tax came in about $550,000 above previous year's calculation. So things are looking good. We are expected to have a small surplus based on our projections of a little over $1 million at this point. Now, our projection anticipates every dollar of supplies, services, and all of those things in departmental budgets to be fully expended. That is relatively unlikely, so it is a conservative estimate.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And our fund balance is massive. Compared to last year, it is $9.5 million ahead of schedule. But with us funding the increases to staff and getting that started, we will spend that down quickly, and we also have things that we've taken out of fund balance that we are currently spending on. So with that said, I like the condition of our fund balance.
How much will the deficit that we're going to have to cover with fund balance affect that?
Our budgeted deficit is going to look way worse than our actual deficit projected for next year, with us removing a lot of budget from sales tax if that budget is approved tonight. Even taking into account that deficit, we are still going to be okay and stay above our 3% test, which is where we need to be. This could become an issue next budget season that we'll have to keep an eye on, because if our sales tax budget gets decreased to maintenance of effort again next year, you're talking about a much larger reduction in comparison to this year. So, you know, we're reducing that by $10.8 million from what we're actually going to get. So if we reduce it by, $12 million next year, because sales tax has been gradually going up, then that affects our budgeted deficit. And if it encroaches into our 3% test, so if we have $12 million above our 3% test, that's all we're allowed to balance the budget with. And if we have a deficit of $13 million, then we obviously can't balance our budget without violating the 3% test, in which the state will send our budget back to us. Okay. So that's just something to keep an eye on for next year. We are good to do this year with MOE. We would be within our 3% test by about $1 million.
So we just better hope no air conditioning units go out next year.
So,
Mr. Lindsay.
We just need to remember that this is just what it looks like on paper. This is not, when it comes to real dollars, we're in really, really good shape. On paper, it looks one way, but in reality, that it's totally different. If we have an air conditioning unit go out, we can pay for it 3 times over. I mean, we paying for things, dollars are not an issue. And then you look at, since I always comment on it, our sales tax number from our last reported month was up almost $600,000 over last year, the same month. So people are spending money. They're spending lots of money, and they're spending a lot of it in Murray County, which is really good for Murray County schools, and it's really good for everybody. So, again, we just need to make sure we don't freak out about what things look like on paper when in reality all that money's coming in and we're in really good shape.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no other lights, I think we're ready to move along. Do you have anything else with finance?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to instruction.
Good evening. The first item is the ESSER funding options. We're going to do something a little different. We're going to build a plane and fly it, hopefully in one night. We are going to look at some ESSER funding options. I'm going to step aside and work with my team to get a budget amendment for the board work session immediately following this. We're going to try to get as close as we can, and if we need to come back and look at other options, we can, but we have to get something sent in to the state to get our $4 million approved. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about $4 million. So if you look at your attachments, and I also sent this to you in email form, there are 3 different options that we've kind of put together. And I believe Dr. Potts and Dr. Skaggs are here, so they can talk a little bit if we need to talk about like the ATSI status and what's going on with them. I will also tell you this, something I was unaware of in my former position and have become aware of in this position is that with the ATSI status, they do have grants. Whitthorne right now has a grant that they have applied for and have received. It's about $68,000. It is targeted professional development. It's targeted primarily towards ELL because ELL was the subgroup that put them in ATSI status. EA Cox has about a $60,000 grant. Their target is basically 100% of their population. It is predominantly economically disadvantaged and their white population, which is the majority of their population. What they are using their funds for are a mindfulness or a sensory room, and they are doing teaching with love and logic as a class, as a school-wide SEL program. They also have put aside some money to have kind of like a, I think they're calling it the Cougar Emporium, where it will be a rewards and reinforcement store, if you will. So just keeping that in mind, I was unaware, we've talked a lot about what are we doing for ATSI schools. I was unaware that that funding existed until I took this position, and apparently you all have approved that in a budget amendment several months ago. So I just wanted to update you on that, just so that we're all on the same page. So if you will look at the ESSER options, the first option is the option that was presented to you at our last meeting. It has money for student devices, it has money for the kiosks, or we could change that to online registration. It has money for the playground equipment, Edgenuity, iReady, reading and math for K-8 district-wide, the CASE assessment, and bonuses for Whitthorne, Central, and EA Cox staff. If you will remember, that was $3,000 over the entire year for certified staff and $2,000 for classified staff. We were looking at that as a retention and recruitment bonus. And then the 3, we had them as assistant principals, deans of students, dean of culture and learning. So that is option 1. Option 2, again, we had student devices in there. We had the online registration system, and that's kind of what we changed the terminology to be. We had the playground equipment, Edgenuity, iReady, reading and math, CASE, and in this one, what we developed was a very large PD package. We were looking at different vendors for Whitthorne, Cox, Central, and at this point we decided, we really need to include Horace O. Porter in this. That is where obviously a lot of our problematic students arrive, and not training that staff, we felt like we would be remiss. And then, of course, the 3 additional positions, deans of students, probably at an assistant principal pay level is why they're listed as assistant principals. The third option was actually a larger PD package. We got rid of that after talking to Dr. Potts and Dr. Skaggs. We talked about, how we would really, how that would really look, because we would be polling teachers throughout the year, and the more PD we put in, the more days we're actually polling teachers, and that seems kind of counterintuitive. So we really got rid of option 3, which is why numerically the slides that I sent you go to option 4. So option 4 is student devices, the online registration, playground, Edgenuity, iReady reading and math, CASE. We decreased to 4 days of PD, the associated costs of PD, and then this one has the addition of Catapult Program for EA Cox only. In talking to Whitthorne, and again, Dr. Skaggs is here, and you can call on her. What she was kind of thinking is, if she could get her staffing right, she could probably build something similar to Catapult Academy. She kind of wanted to do it in-house. Dr. Potts really wants to go back to the Cougar Academy. I will also tell you this, if you will recall, when we first started the conversation about Cougar Academy or Catapult Academy, I had said that it was going to be in the special education budget, and it can be in the special education budget. What we were thinking about was putting it in ESSER funding for 1 year, and then, in special education I can save money for carryover for the following year. So our thought was, if we put it in ESSER for this year, saved back that special ed money, that way we could guarantee that EA Cox would have Cougar Academy for 2 years, probably 3 if we're able to save back enough money. That way we could really see if something works, because you really just don't know if something works in 1 year. As I stated, we're trying to be flexible, so please give me your thoughts so that we can build something that works for all of us.
Mr. Ventura, which one of these would be your preference right now, before I dive into kind of what I'm thinking?
I would go with option 4. That is my favorite of the options, if you will. And I will say, after, I think Ms. Parker sent an email that talked about, do we really need $120,000 for online registration? I would not be opposed to decreasing the PD and taking the online registration money and putting that for deans of students, so that we could kind of have a good combination of, so kind of my option 5 would be all of this except taking out the online registration system, decreasing the PD speakers, books, and resources, because I think we could do it for the 124, and creating deans of students. I am not 100% sold on deans of students. I'm not going to lie to this board. I think if done well, it is an awesome opportunity. My problem is what Mr. Howell had mentioned at the last meeting. I do not know if we'll be able to fit them in budgets for years to come. And again, when I look at the teacher shortage, are we creating positions that we cannot fill, or we will fill with certified people that could be teaching? So option 4 is my preference, but I like all the options.
All right. And thank you for answering that, because that's kind of, get this up here. I don't have answers either on this. I've been kind of going back and forth on the several of these. I too like the Dean of Students approach, and I have the same concerns that we create these positions. Actually, I have 2 concerns. One would be we create positions, and again, we can't fill them, or maybe we fill 1 or 2. And the other part of that to go with it is that we really have to be very intentional with that. I think it has potential to work, but it would mean us as a district creating a program that supports that integrates that into our current discipline plans, and really they can make a change there. The other one is, for me, honestly, is I'm worried that it was only funded for 1 year. That's a big concern, because that's just not enough time for us to really, that is a program to me that needs 3 to 4 years to really even have some teeth to it, because I don't know how much you can do if you're not even sure we're going to have it next year. And to go with that, the Catapult program would be kind of similar for that for me. I'm worried that if we're only funding 1 year, how much good can we do if we're just not even sure it's going to make it one calendar year on this? So that would be my concern of all of those. I'm more than happy to get rid of the online registration or the kiosks with the pictures we got. Those are nice. So I don't know if I've got answers on that, but I think I'm struggling with some of the same things that you mentioned. Thank you.
I'm going to share some of the similar sentiments. I kind of like option 5. I'll be honest with you. I've struggled with this as well. I don't like to fund something for 1 year. I like that you're thinking outside of the box with Catapult, and you've got a way to potentially fund it for 2, possibly even 3 years. And that's when we can really see if it's effective or not. So in talking to numerous people, administrators, teachers, I too struggle with the whole dean of students, dean of culture, dean of whatever you want, dean of discipline, however you want to term it. I think that there are certain schools that could benefit from this. But not being able to fund it beyond 1 year, I don't know how effective that would be. The other component to all of this is we're not sure what's going to happen next year. We've got some interesting things happening. With our pay scale being completely different, that's going to attract something. It's already attracting people. And our discipline policy that we're going to talk about tonight, I think that's going to help us tremendously make strides moving forward. Not only with just discipline, but with teachers' morale. If I send a student as a teacher, if I send a student to the office and it just gets sent back and still going to be disruptive, that's demoralizing. So I'm hoping that we've created a much clearer path so that if that student is continuing to become a problem, that there's actions that will hold that child and parent accountable. So with that being said, like I said, I like option 5 that we don't really have here, but I mean, I think I could definitely support option 4.
Mr. Lindsay? I guess I would like option, if I have a preference, option 5. But just to make a statement to our board, we decide what we fund. We decide what we put emphasis on. If dean of students, if we see there's benefit in that, it's up to us to step up to the plate to fund that, not pass that off on someone else. And then we're talking about, there's a $300,000 number in there out of a $115 million budget. We're talking about pennies. If it's something that's beneficial, we don't need to pass the buck to someone else. It's our responsibility to take care of that. So I could pick everything apart and come up with my own plan, but if I'm choosing one of you guys' plans, then I'm probably a plan 5 in favor of that. So, and just to add to that, feedback I've gotten that there's a lot of benefit to the Catapult at EA Cox. It's gone away. If that's something that was beneficial at the time, I think obviously, Ms. Ventura, you saw benefit in it because you put it back in your special education budget. So I think that we definitely need to do that. The only question I have is, seems like a lot of money in PD for 4 days and books and resources, $285,000. But that's not the waters I swim in. That's what you guys do, and if you guys see benefit in that, then I can go along with it. So.
Ms. Parker.
I will just in saying that the PD would be for every single staff member at Whitthorne, Cox, Central, and Horace O. Porter.
On option 4 with the student devices, that's more than was originally budgeted, like in option 1. What's the thought there on that increase?
The thought behind that was getting us further ahead. When we look at the number of devices that are broken, that are as we increase our staff numbers, hopefully this year, the number of staff devices, the original ask from the instructional technology team was $1 million, and that budget amendment is on the special called meeting. But if we could, any extra money that we had, we just felt like if we could get ahead with second grade Chromebooks, if we could get ahead with 10th grade, you know, we're trying to get to a place where we know exactly what we need next, and then there's always the unforeseen, so we always have to have the extras. So our thought was if we could give Tommy and Chris that money, we could potentially save money out of the fiscal 24 budget.
I guess overall, how much of ESSER funds have we spent on student devices?
In ESSER 1, you spent just over $1 million. I mean, it's like $1,012,000. And then in ESSER 3, yes.
So, I don't have the notes right in front of me, so exact dollar amounts. It was brought at a little over $1 million in ESSER 1. This would be the first out of ESSER 3, because we had originally planned hardly any for us. I think CTE got some labs out of it, but the ESSER 2 is right at about, I think it was up to right at $2 million, because we did 4th grade Chromebooks, we did 9th grade and 5th grade, and some growth position was that we got rid of all the older broken flip screens and all that kind of stuff this year. So, but like Ms. Ventura said, this would get us ahead for that additional year. That additional money would.
So collectively, then it's $3 million.
Yeah, right around $3 million.
Okay, and then this would be another 1.6 on top of that. And I just bring that up because, again, I feel like when I look at what this funding was really intended for, I feel like it's for student learning. And if we know, we're sitting here talking about $350,000 for Catapult for something that we know we need based on what we've heard from the principal. We know that we potentially need it at Whitthorne. I'm going to venture that we might potentially need it at Central too. Why don't we go ahead and do it at those places instead of doing the devices? Because I'll just say with devices, I feel like that's like a textbook. Like that's something that we're going to have to get to the point where we need that just like we need teachers, we need buses, and we need textbooks. It's got to be in our budget. And so I get trying to get ahead and trying to manipulate this money, but this money I feel like is supposed to be used on things that our students really, really need. And I'm just speaking as a parent. My kid never brought home a device. Obviously, as a kindergartner, not much as a 3rd grader, a little bit as a 5th grader. It doesn't, I mean, I've said before, it doesn't really impact me, and I'm glad that they're using them in class, but we did it before, and I'm not sure that our learning has really changed that much that we've got to get this far ahead on the spending. That's where I'm struggling.
Ms. Irvin.
Thank you. Quick question, Ms. Ventura. The Edgenuity and the iReady, are those things that our teachers are asking for and they're wanting to extend, or is that just something we're kind of thinking would be helpful? This is a multifold question continuing, but that's the first.
The iReady and the Edgenuity, yes, and the case test bank has been asked for repeatedly. iReady is the perfect blend of intervention and remediation because it can be used for both. It does have a diagnostic. It sets a child on a path. It has a prescribed time, and that's something that we as an instruction department have to monitor and be sure that we're not, we don't just want kids in the corner on iReady for days, whether it's math or reading. There is a prescribed time for it. It's one of those great tools that helps a teacher see exactly what skill a child is missing, helps to remediate that skill and intervene with that skill, and it has a standards component. I mean, it is the whole package. And every teacher I have talked to has been excited that we were thinking of doing this district-wide.
Okay.
Edgenuity is our credit recovery model. It is what we use here at Virtual Academy. It is what we use with homebound students, and also has a path, if you will, for struggling students.
Okay.
So it is a multi-purpose.
So I appreciate that, and I appreciate hearing the feedback from the teachers because from a student perspective, I fear that there are some and this is the minority, I know, not the majority, but I do feel like I have heard of potential abuse on that, like where it's just go get on that and do your thing, and we don't want to create that environment. So I want to make sure that it's well, controlled, or whatever the right word for that is. In case assessments, you're saying that we're hearing teachers ask for those, because I'm hearing that they don't like the assessments and we're assessed out. I'm still not a fan.
Teachers are asking for the question bank in case, so that they can create common formative assessments and know where their kids are in real time. They are not huge fans. Not all. There are some that are big fans because they understand what data can show them when data is used appropriately. However, they are asking for, I need temperature checks of my children. I want to work with, as a science department, we want to work together and see exactly what standards you're hitting, what standards I'm hitting. Are we hitting them together? Are we hitting them cohesively? Where are our kids struggling? Do I even need to teach this? I mean, a lot of times we assess kids and they already know stuff, and we don't have to, So that is what they're asking for, and that's what the bulk of this money is. What we have agreed to as an instruction team is that we will give the case assessment once. It will be twice for students that are on a block schedule at the high school. But we will give it once just to have that diagnostic of where we are and what teachers do we need to coach. Who's not following the pacing guide? It's critical information for principals, assistant principals, district staff. It should be critical information for teachers. But I agree. We do not want to assess, teach. Assess, teach. That doesn't give us any time to change the trajectory of the assessment.
So I'm really going to ask for that we really start focusing on our assessment and start trying to do things. So I appreciate hearing that from you.
And you will see on the website, we will have an assessment calendar that clearly spells that out.
I will like to stress, I know in one of I think it's option 3, we labeled them as additional assistant principals. I really want, if we can look at that, I really do want to see some students. Personally, I feel like that's beneficial, and I think it's beneficial for, I think a lot of people, we're going to have to really well define that role. There's a lot of kids, especially in some of these environments, that they don't need someone to come in just when there's a problem. They need people to know them and care about them. And I personally think we need to change that culture. They need to know that there's people in that building that care about what's going on in their home. It doesn't always have to be Johnny's in trouble, we're going to go discipline and handle Johnny. It could be just, hey, what's going on? And I know that that's not the traditional educational model, but I think that's where we're going to start seeing change with our behavior, is when we change culture. And I'm a big fan of that. And I, like Mr. Lindsay, agree that if that's something we need to work in to help change the culture, then I'm 100% behind it. So I'm somewhat a fan, which is not even on here, of I'd like to give the opportunity for the Catapult or Cougar Academy or whatever we call it. If our principal there feels like that's helpful, I feel like we should respect that. But I would also like to try to find potentially a director or a dean of students to help promote that culture from all angles. So
yes, and that person is going to have to be, a lot of that PD money will probably go for those deans of students. We're going to have to train that person up in restorative practices and trauma-informed practices. And just to touch on what Ms. Parker had asked about, if we really believe in Catapult, should we be doing it right in school? And I will say my fear at Central High School, the way Catapult is set up is that it has one teacher, one social worker, and 2 EAs, and typically it's a maximum of 10 students. Now, the students should be rotated, I mean, it should be an intervention, right? So these kids should be, as they are progressing, being sent out so that a space is available for another student. It is not a good high school model at this point. Catapult is working very hard to build that. The problem when you get into high school is the teacher of record problem, and having somebody who actually knows how to teach chemistry when you're one teacher teaching all of those subjects. So the high school model for Catapult and SESI is not well defined. You have to use your own teachers, and that's counterproductive for us right now. That's the only reason Central was not even asked about that, just to clarify that.
Okay, let me ask you a few questions. What would the cost be, and I think I know, but I want to hear you talk through it, of doing the Catapult style model at Cox, Withorn, and Porter, and then doing the 3 assistant principals, either Cox, Withorn Central, or Cox, Withorn, Porter, or 4 of them? What would we be looking at finance-wise on that, if that were its own line item, where you just put both those things together?
So again, Catapult is $350,000, so that would be $750 for Cox and Withorn. Again, I would not recommend a Catapult necessarily at HOP,
Okay.
because we already have a social worker here, we already have EAs here, and we have lower student-teacher ratios.
Okay.
However, it is $350,000 a pop, so you'd be talking $1,050.
Okay, well, let's just go with the 2 then.
The deans of students, what we average them on, that's why they're listed as assistant principals, and I apologize for that misnomer there. But we put them at assistant principal pay, basically, so that's right at $299,422. So it is an easy, like I said, if you look at option 3, option 4, you can take 350 out of the student devices and create 2 Catapult programs. You could combine the PD and the new online registration system, just get rid of the online registration system from ESSER, and that would pay for your deans of students.
You just went 10 miles an hour ahead of what I was.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's good. I'm not going to make a motion, but I do want to talk through this and come up with a motion.
We can't have a motion.
That's right. We're not voting on anything.
But I need you to tell me exactly what you want so I can go create that budget amendment right now.
What you said is pretty much what I want.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Howe.
So just looking at the iReady, so we have that now. Like, we already have iReady. From what I understand, we've only purchased like this tool and this tool and this tool, and this kind of gets us the rest of the toolbox so that you can do. In fact, from what my understanding, it will do a lot of what CASE has been doing, and we're already using it. We're just not utilizing it to its full potential. There are aspects of CASE, iReady, that we are not utilizing as a district, and some of that is we don't know, or people don't know about it, and that's just what I'm hearing. I don't use CASE or iReady, but the other part is it's just we haven't purchased it. So, I mean, if just to put it in simple terms, if I'm at a tire shop and I need a lug wrench and I only have a wrench, I need to go purchase that lug wrench to make this work. So I think we need to be giving the tools that we need to make sure that it can do what it needs to. I'm not a test guy. I think I made it abundantly clear that I don't want any more assessments. So if we can do more with what we're already doing, I don't know why that would even be like something we wouldn't do. Obviously the CASE assessments, I'm pretty sure that was a bigger number when we first started this conversation, and so it has come down. That's been my goal for the whole time. I really would like my goal to be 0 there, but I understand the need for these test banks that are standards based. I mean, I can sit here and create a test for social studies for Tennessee history. Is it going to hit the standards? I don't know. I mean, I can pull standards and do. If I'm a teacher, and I'm already covering another class, how much time do I have to research my questions to make sure? I don't know. I understand the need to have a test bank, so I can live with that being there, as long as it's not a district level. We're going to be using case this day, this day, this day on top of what we're already doing, so I can live with that. I would like to see Dean of Students though.
Thank you. Ms. Kinzer?
Well, first of all, Withorn and Cox principals are here, and I'm a real aficionado of seeing body language, so I've kind of looked over there and watched as they were, the discussion was going on, and I too would like to see the Dean of Students included. I think the case assessment definitely, the 6 days of PD, Catapult, all of that, if we can pull that together and take some of it out of the student devices and balance it that way. I also want to give them an opportunity if they want to have anything to say about the things you feel the most important. Or are we just... Yeah, I think we're just we want to do what's best that'll help you all, and I know you've put a lot of work into this. I appreciate the fact that staff has, and I don't want to micromanage all of this. You're the guys that are going to be using it, so talk to us.
One of the things that we see a big need for is the Dean of Students. Like Ms. Irvin said, when kids are sent to the office, we don't just say, you're suspended, you're in school suspension, and move on. There's a lot of coaching. There's a lot of restorative practices that go into play. There's calling the parents. We've had more parents come in this year wanting to meet with admin, their student. And so we're not only trying to run the building and make sure instruction's happening, we're also attending to all the other needs of students that do play into discipline. If you come to Whitthorne, you're going to see kids every period saying, where's Mr. Thomason? Where's Dr. Skaggs? Where's Dr. Pogue? Because we have built those relationships. But then, because there's only 3 of us and 1,000 students, if we do have major infractions, it does eat up a lot of our time. So having someone else that can help us, and we would love to see that person working with teachers, because you're right, Mr. Howell. If a student comes up and the teacher sees that student back on the hallway later that day, and we haven't had time to tell them, did you know this was going on last night? We had a coaching conversation. They're going to serve maybe a period, half a day, whatever. The teacher doesn't see that, and they don't feel validated. And so if we have that additional support, we can build the culture to what we want it to be. Catapult Program was a wonderful opportunity for Cox, and I would love to see it at Whitthorne. We saw with our 5th grade academy this year, there were several kids that could have benefited from it. And we tried to problem solve, could we do it in-house? Again, if you want to give us the funds to do it, that's amazing, because that takes one less burden off of us trying to figure out how to do it in-house. But we were looking at how we could sustain over time, because a kid from an elementary to a middle school may only need 2 weeks of that environment to be able to be successful and follow the Whitthorne way. So we look at it as kind of a short term, you come in, you get acclimated, you get your social, emotional learning, you also learn study skills, you learn what it means to behave in our school versus maybe what's accepted at home. We honor that, but then there's a difference at school. So there's a multifaceted approach to that. We just need support to do it. So we would appreciate anything that you could do for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lindsay?
I didn't address the Dean of Students a while ago, but I see a lot of upside to those, and we could kind of use these 3 schools as a pilot program. Maybe that's something we want to do county-wide. And thinking of Dean of Students over the last few weeks, I've even thought that maybe we could incorporate into their responsibilities that they're also our school-wide athletic directors. That now that puts the athletic director in some type of administrative role, possibly, and a lot of times discipline and athletics coincide with one another. But just a thought, but I think it's something that I see a lot of benefit in, and maybe we kind of use this to pilot the program, and then we get feedback from there, and we expand this county-wide. But just my thoughts on it.
Okay, thank you very much. Does that give, oh, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, just wanted to toss a couple of other things in. First of all, thank you for the positive feedback that we're getting on Catapult. I knew nothing about it when I came to Cox this year, but it was the first thing last summer as I sat and spoke with every employee before I actually took the job July 1st. The number one thing they were asking for in the school was to have Cougar Academy back, which is what they called it in the building, because they had seen such positive potential there, and then of course it was taken away before it, actually had a full culture effect. So I am excited that we may be able to get that back for them. As far as the Dean of Students that we're talking about, we actually have a job description already written for that we're calling the Dean of Culture and Learning. And it does work with those students one-on-one to try to dig through to the essence of what their problems are. But this person also is a teacher trainer. They go into the classroom to help teachers see where there are some opportunities for positive behavior reinforcement and different ways to approach student discipline. So it is a big part working with students, but it is also a huge part of ongoing professional development as that person is pushing in and, again, changing the entire culture of the building and tying that positive behavior into the learning and the culture of that part of the culture as well. One thing on the case assessments, I totally agree with our students being over-tested. My biggest issue, of course, lies with the state testing, but that's not something we have control over. But where we're wanting to use the case assessments, the big thing for me that CASE has, I will never want to get rid of iReady. Let me back up and say that. They are amazing at the feedback we get and the data we get. But what we don't get from iReady is any feedback for our social studies and science teachers. They are just kind of flying in the wind until the state testing actually comes about. This gives them those test items that we were talking about, and by doing it one big case assessment for the year, that can be just like a pre-test. We do it closer to the time for the state testing, and Will knows, he's been in my classroom before. We always take that big pre-test to know where we are. Sorry to call you out. To know where we are, to know those last places we need to drill down to before that state test comes out. So we, as a faculty, as administrators, those things do work in tandem, the iReady and the case assessments as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have all the information you need to go back?
So you want Catapult times 2, and you want 3 deans of students.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll make it happen.
Let me ask you just a total side question. Which part, you had briefly mentioned Love and Logic, teaching with Love and Logic. Where does that come in?
Oh, that's my favorite part. That actually, by being an ATSI school, we could apply for a grant from the state. Unfortunately, that money was supposed to help us with this year's students. We know how the State Department works. We actually got that money. I think we could start issuing POs last week. But we are using a large majority of that to do training over the summer for every faculty member, every staff member, both classified and licensed. They will come in for a 3-day training. I'm actually doing the training. I'm becoming a Love and Logic instructor, so that it's not, we have to bring in a speaker and then we get new teachers and they never hear the speaker. So there are 2 options for the summer. The teachers will come in for either of one of the 2 3-day options. It's full-day training. There are videos, but it's not self-directed videos. We will watch the video of the precepts together. And if you haven't read Teaching with Love and Logic or even Parenting with Love and Logic, it will change your world. They are just time-honored texts that really change your way of looking at education and how to engage children. So there are 9 basic precepts to Love and Logic. The video, there's one video for each of those precepts. So as a faculty, we will watch them together. We will talk through together. Okay, what's an instance this year where we could have used this strategy and had a better outcome? So as a group of teachers, we go through that. By having those videos, by having me as the trainer, moving forward, new teachers will always be on board with that. It's not a thing that we do. It's a way of changing how we address students. And one of the core concepts of Love and Logic is how you discipline a student and issue consequences while maintaining their dignity and your own dignity. And so it's not a separate class that we will be teaching. It's just going to be how adults in the building address students at Cox Middle School.
Thank you very much. I ran
Thank you.
across Love and Logic curriculum about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And came that close to becoming a trainer back then, but it just was the wrong time to do it.
Well, come on
But
and help
it
us
is a
out.
phenomenal program, so I am very excited to hear that that's something that's going to be incorporated into the schools. Mr. Moore, you're the last light on.
Real quick, so we've kind of addressed, on the ATSI side of things, we're addressing the Catapult at 2 schools now. I just want to make sure, are there any other resources we need to give to Central?
Can you find us some teachers?
Within the scope of the proposal here.
Yeah, staffing is just it's just an astronomical. When I talk to Dr. Skaggs and Ms. Potts, they are rapidly finding more applicants, and unfortunately, Central is still seeing an exodus. I do.
I guess I'll preface it this way. I just want to make sure this is an opportunity, obviously, to address a noted problem we have at these 3 schools. I just want to make sure we're giving, we're putting a pretty large chunk of money at 2 other schools. I just want to make sure if there's something we can do here. I don't have an answer for what that is, but if there is, I want to make sure we give it a chance, because I want to give all 3 of these schools every chance we can to pull out of this and rise above it.
Yes, and I think Kendra can speak to how much time she's put in and what how difficult it is going to be to change that culture.
Sure.
I think, again, I hate to say that professional development is the answer, because it's not. It has to be cultivated, and it has to be, but that long-term trauma-informed practices, restorative practices, that long-term, and when you have a new faculty, unfortunately, just building that collaboration. So I don't want to say that we're putting a lot of thought into it, and I would not be surprised if we came back with an amendment when we go through all the other ESSER funds and say, hey, we think we found something that might help. We don't have the silver bullet, obviously,
Sure.
but it's multifaceted, but really rooted in, and it's kind of like behavior. I can talk out of both sides of my mouth, and they're going to kill me because they just sold you on the ideas, but I can talk out of both sides of my mouth as the dean of students, because if we had more adults in the building, kids would have more supervision. Kids would have more adult mentors and relationships built, and that does take away from the discipline that is occurring. So
Well,
that's
saying
a
that
stay
you would bring
tuned.
something back. That's all
Yeah.
I needed. Thank you.
Good evening. You see where you look at the options for summer school program options. That's a summary of the programs that are going on this summer. You see in high school, we mainly have credit recovery. In elementary and middle school, we have the summer learning that similar to what we had last year. We've consolidated some sites, but the second summary has both options. We accidentally thought when we uploaded the first one, it had both of them, but we uploaded the second PDF there has the options for what's going on in high school and what's going on in elementary K-8 this summer.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion there? All right, let's move on.
We will need to move
Okay. Moving those to consent then.
So moving on is just the, I think according to the policy, you have to approve, any funding. If we were gonna ask for additional funding, like we're gonna ask for tuition, but the state gave us funding. And if we are asking you to provide additional funding, or if we were gonna ask to charge tuition, you would have to give us approval to do that. We will be coming to you with, you will approve the summer learning, because we're gonna come to you with, once we get our learning camps application approved, we're gonna ask you to approve that budget amendment to add those funds so we can, do summer camp. We just haven't received approval back yet.
So at this point, it sounds like there is nothing to vote on with this, or?
No.
Okay.
As soon as we have that amendment, it may be an add to the agenda on
So we
June
would see
7th.
it in the form of a budget amendment?
Yes,
Is
sir.
all we would have
Yes,
to take
sir.
action on? Okay.
You already approved ESSER funding for credit recovery, for high school in ESSER 1 alone. We're still using those funds. So those funds will, the last of those ESSER 1 funds will dwindle out for high school credit recovery.
All right.
The others we're doing in summer camp funds. We may need some ESSER funding, but that's already in the ESSER funds that you previously approved.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Did y'all get your questions, comments? Y'all have any other questions? All right.
So the next items are, you have the ESSER, the routine where we bring our ESSER funding and, our ESCA and IDA funding application to you. That's our routine thing that we present to you each year.
Do we have to vote to approve that?
I will go, yes, sir, it'll go to consent.
Okay. Any conversations? Seeing none, we'll move that to consent.
And now we have our low bids.
Okay.
Or if there are any questions, we have folks here to answer those questions.
Are there any questions on the bids? It looks like there are 7 total. Are we good with moving to consent these 7 bids? Okay, we'll move all 7 to consent. What'd you find?
We're supposed to approve the summer school, who can go, not just budget, but who can go, Policy 4.204, unless I'm wrong.
So
We should approve that.
summer school, period.
What we offer, who can attend, not just the budgetary part, but we have to actually approve it at the recommendation of the
Mr.
superintendent.
Gerard, do you have something to add to that? Okay, so do we want to move it to consent agenda, or do we want to talk about it any further?
Since we wouldn't have voted on this new policy, we kinda have to. Kinda how it works.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it needs to be on consent agenda.
Okay, that's what I was asking for, was consent, for consent agenda. All right, Ms. Irvin, your light's on.
Sure, and forgive me for not saying something earlier. I looked through these briefly, but not to the full extent. I guess this first question is going to be for Mr. Ritchie. I noticed one was for purchase of band uniforms at, was it Central? Didn't we do that just last year? Like 60,000 or something?
That's the same monies for
Oh.
that. It just went through the bid process and
my
everything.
bad. I was just like making
Yes, ma'am.
sure. Are the other schools also getting those? I know we were going to try to do that for.
It is projected
for future planning, as part of our strategic plan, and in that budget for Spring Hill High School would be next year, followed by Mount Pleasant High School the following year.
Okay, so they are being taken care of.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just want to make sure. And then I guess then I just answered probably, or you answered my question with textbooks, which would be, I guess, Mr. Gaines. Because I was thinking we had to approve like 900-something thousand, but this is just a portion of that spend, is that correct?
You had already approved,
Right.
the 900,000 was part of some of the ESSER funding and some
Okay.
of the other textbooks. This gets us prepared for next year. You have the majority of that is the social studies funding and the purchases we need to make due to increased enrollment.
So this isn't additional, this is just using that funds, is that correct?
That's the money that's already in the
Right,
existing GP textbook fund.
That's just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify, thank you.
Ms. Parker?
I just wanna make sure with the summer school curriculum, if we approve that at our next meeting, won't summer school have already started though?
You will, the problem with approving are we talking about the funding or actually approving
No, I'm
the
talking about
summer
approving
school?
the actual curriculum, following our policy,
Right.
yeah.
The previous policy, we've added what needs to be added to the policy.
I'm talking about the existing policy that we have before we adopt a new one potentially in June.
I'm just going to the old policy it's on the agenda. I mean, it's on the work session.
Yeah, it is. I mean, line 3 says, on an annual basis, the superintendent of schools shall recommend a summer school program which must be approved by the board. It shall consist of the courses to be offered, those students who are eligible to attend, attendance requirements, and other relevant information of the program. I think y'all have that. I'm just saying, I mean, I think you have that to recommend to us, but we can't vote on it here tonight. And I'm saying, if we do vote on it in June, won't summer school have already started? When we vote on June 6th.
Summer school does start on June 6th, yes.
Where do we go?
Vote on the 6th. I mean, that's right. It probably should have been voted on before, given the timing, but the policy says it's got to be approved. You need to approve it. If it's going to be on consent, it'll pass. We'll be in good shape.
We really, with learning loss, and we were really, the issue was high schools trying to finish up, trying to really decide who was in credit recovery, really delayed us. We really had a lot of discussion at staff about when we should, about the date of when this policy should be, whether it should be May, whether it should be April. We think if we do it in April, we may not have a good estimate of how many students needed. I guess we could give you an estimate. It's better in May. We know more exactly what we want, but I understand what you're saying is, with the way our meetings are, we're starting summer school before we approve it. So we can do it in April and try to have it. I think our goal is to maybe at the end of April or at the April work session, maybe present those items to you. Maybe we'll be closer to knowing what we need.
If I could jump in there, I think her point's the same as mine. I don't think we have to have it any certain time. We just want to make sure we follow policy and check the boxes and get it done correctly. And to do that, we need to go ahead and approve what we have. If we were going to change policy, we would change policy as well, but we wouldn't have done that before approving. We'll make it all work out in the end, but.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsey.
Well, just don't forget too that our policy and state law, state law just changed. We have to do this summer school. We don't have a choice. So it's I don't know, it's kind of redundant that the state tells us we have to do this, but then our policy says that we have to do it. Well, no kidding. The state told us we have to do it, and they gave us the funding to do it. So, but.
All right, so is this going on consent? Is that what I'm understanding? Okay.
Well, can I just say, let's just make sure that we look at what our current policy says for what all you have to provide us as far as, I mean, I think you've got some information as far as like numbers, but what all is being taught, those type of things, just to make sure that those items in the current policy are checked off in the documents that you give us. 'cause that comes as a recommendation from you, Ms. Ventura.
Okay.
Thank you. Operations.
Good evening. The first few things that are listed for me tonight, the operations update, capital projects report, train report, project cost report, those are just your monthly updates. I can walk through anything on those that you would like me to. Tonight, we can do that individually if you have questions, by email, phone, call. We can do it at the board, meeting. I would encourage you to look at the operations update, just at the amount of work. We're at the time of year where most everybody's ready to go home Monday, and my folks know that they've got a long 2 months coming. So we're gearing up and a lot's going on. In our world right now, McDowell is probably our most time-consuming item to get through as we get ready to start the summer. We'll bring you some information on that in the next month, and bring you some items about what we're doing over the course of the summer. So if you look at those, just let me know. Also, if you will look at, I do want to point out something on the train report. There's a very pretty graph at the back of the train report that just illustrates kind of how the work that we have put into our schools has benefited us and the amount of money that we are ahead of where we should be right now. Right now, going into the 9th month of this year, we're $553,000 ahead of our projected energy savings. And that comes from the projects you do. When you look at them and you look at the red bar as the actual, the only one that is not performed this year is the brand new one at Santa Fe, and that's our fault. We did 2 major propane purchases trying to buy ahead of this rising cost. And so we bought out of turn this year because we did have the money, and it makes it look like it's not performing. If you back our second purchase out, it is performing as well as any of our other buildings. So just let you know that what you're approving for us and what we're trying to put in is working. We are shutting down Mount Pleasant Elementary, Riverside, and Spring Hill Elementary this summer as we complete, or not complete, as we work through major portions of their HVAC due to, and Mr. Hall can speak to this if need be if I say it wrong, due to the backlog in supply chain. We are not going to finish them over the summer, but we have been working with them on a plan that we will never interrupt school. We can do that at fall break, we can do it at night, we can do it as far as Christmas if need be. Everything will be functional when we walk back in, and we'll make sure that everything looks good, and that no one really knows we're in there. There may be a few ceiling panels out at times, but we'll make sure that work goes. But I do want to let you know that is coming to good use as we go through there. Any questions about anything that's ongoing? Yes, ma'am.
You already know what I'm going to ask, I
Okay.
bet. Where are we at on our 2 projects current that we...
Right now, we completed on the high school the SC portion, which is the schematics on the high school. I have a file I can send you if you wish, where you can kind of see where we are on that. They are continuing to work and draw towards final completion on that. We are hoping, we just had a conversation, we're going to contact Hewlett Spencer tomorrow and Bell Construction to see where they are as far as numbers and where they're going from there. And what we're waiting for is the final, or the GMP that's proposed to us on the high school, and then that allows us to go from there. Did have a good conversation with the architect yesterday, not about the building, but about his fees. He called and said, look, we are going to bill you on the minimum projection that was provided right now. If it comes in over, we're not going to bill that. You cannot control these crazy costs, and we're not going to gouge you for more money. However, if it comes in cheaper than that projection, we will refund the difference. We clarified with them, are you sure? Because this doesn't sound, like great, because you're leaving money on the table, and they just said, your community cannot, we shouldn't benefit from your community because gas prices and steel prices are going through the roof. So they've set their price, they're not going to ask for more money, and we've basically paid out that portion of that. So we're working, and that was good information. Hopefully, by the time we're back in a couple of weeks, and definitely by the time we're back for the June work session, we should be ready to tell you, here's where we are and this is what we're doing.
That was Project 1.
That's Project 1. That goes with both, because
Okay.
the plans are finished for the gym.
Yes.
And so everything just depends on, we've got this total pot of money, and we've kind of got to see where we're lying on the front end as we start, because, we just need to be smart when we're doing it. If I've got money to buy my 2 kids school clothes, I can't buy one of them all the clothes and spend all the money on the front end. I gotta be kinda judicious with that. So everything's good, everything's ready, we're shovel ready on that one. We just gotta be ready to go when we know our numbers. And you have to approve those GMPs. So really, once we get that, we have to come to you, and we can't bring it to you until it's full.
So, are we still good to go on the gym? It's just taking a little bit longer?
It's just waiting on this next set of numbers, yes,
Waiting
ma'am.
on this next set of numbers, okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
when should we expect shovels in the ground? I really don't know yet. I mean, I get asked that question every day, so I think that's a fair question to ask.
Part of
so.
that's gonna come down to how quickly they get this GMP back. Do you accept their GMP? Or do we push back and say, we gotta do something
Okay.
else? Kinda from there, and that's all gonna do that. Once the GMP is approved, and we have that process approved, shovels will be in the ground very quickly.
Okay.
I will tell you, now, you know that the gym has no set timeline. We can start and end it at any point. We can work around it and have school. The high school, to be able to open on 24, we need to be doing the mass grading relatively soon. So within the next couple of meetings, we, if nothing else, will probably bring you a mass grading package that is separate from the building package. And when I say mass grading, it just means starts moving the dirt, getting it ready. And then once the next package would be where we come and say, this is where your water, your actual concrete, all your lines start running, we actually start building. So that's our thought right now, is we probably are gonna bring you a mass grading, and then once we do that, we'll be set to start moving on everything else.
So again, and I'm sorry, I just wanna make sure, I know how backed up every trade in the world is now, but they're having these conversations ready to roll, so when we get it good, it's not gonna be another year waiting for our people,
Should not
so.
be, no
Okay.
ma'am, no ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Lindsay.
Is that gonna be one GMP, or will those be two separate GMPs?
They need to be two separate, I do believe. We can do that however you guys are gonna steer the boat on that. I would prefer they be two separate, but, I mean, you guys are the drivers. So if you want one, I can ask them to bring it both ways, broken out into two separate or as one whole, and that may just give you options on how you choose to do that.
Okay, thank you. Continue on.
So from there, the first item that we have for you tonight, we were sent an email, Ms. Ventura and I, that said, to bring to you proposed budgets if money were to have a discussion about money coming out of fund balance for maintenance and for athletics the way that we did last year. So if you see it 73221 and 73222, we've got proposed athletic and maintenance budgets. We were asked to say, okay, if we were to say 2 million, where would you be? If you can see Mr. Pointer's list and then my list for the other, I brought you a $4 million that we know we could spend easily, and Mr. Pointer's here to speak to the list that he brought, answer any questions that you may have about the order, how we went about determining the order, and how we would go about anything that we would be given if so. The athletic one's listed first. If you would like for Chris to come, he beat me to it. So he's here to discuss what he proposed and anything like that.
So if you're looking on your on the agenda, there's two attachments broken out, but I also gave you a hard copy. So the first copy is staff recommendations, but if you go all the way to the back, that's kind of a 5-year comprehensive that is constantly flowing and moving. And so the reason why I combined the two is based on our conversations from last year that stated wanting to see us be more comprehensive and have a greater approach to more sports across the district. And the other one was also to allow school board members to see the more of a comprehensive plan. Because at the end of the day, of course, if the school board wanted to decide that they wanted to focus their attention in a particular area, that they could do that. When you see the 5-year comprehensive, there are not really any estimated prices there, just because if we decide to do one 5 years later, it doesn't make sense to put a price there with prices fluctuating back and forth. But on the staff recommendations, we did work as hard as we could to try to get as close to what that cost could be estimated. There are still some to be determined as it pertains to some construction type costs when it looks at, like, for example, the Cullioca weight room that's in the old ag building that needs to be renovated, refurbished. If you've ever been in there, it's not the best place to do any lifting of weights, I'll tell you that. And you definitely don't want to lift weights when it's 110 inside the ag building. So there's some work that needs to be done out there, and to really get a true cost, I mean, we got to really crunch numbers to be able to put that together. So that's why you kind of see a to be determined in certain areas. But the list is as comprehensive as we can make it, and trying to stick to the request that was given to be able to provide to you today. So I will answer any questions that you all may have regarding that list.
I might say one of the things we did talk about off the money that you had this year, and you do have the breakdown of how those monies have been spent on both sides of our projects. By the next board meeting, we will upload, just as an FYI to you, pictures of the work that has been done this year based off of the money that was given. We, Chris and I looked today through, we're waiting for one more gym floor. We're doing 5 gym floors this summer. I think you're going to be kind of blown away at how they look. We have 4 of them. We're waiting on one more. We want you to see that the monies that he's worked on this year, what they've done and how it's been put to good use, as well as the maintenance money. Also with that, and this is just a note, Mr. Howell and I talked a while back, probably about a month and a half ago. We placed on the operations page of the website, there's a document that shows you all of our ongoing projects across athletics, across our world right now, and it has the contact for who is the lead on there. So if someone had a question about what's happening at Cullioca at the baseball field, they can go to our page, find that list, and it tells them that Chris Pointer is the lead, or it tells them that Murray Ring is the lead, depending on the type of project that it is. And we're trying to keep that as current as we can. Some fall off really quickly, but we're working through that just in an effort so that folks see kind of what's going. And when you give us money, it's not just money that, hey, we went and bought a bunch of cool stuff. We're actually putting it back into the kids in the building. So that's just an FYI on that.
I do want to add, too, that I put in there also other options for consideration. I failed to mention that. So I put in there transportation, because we do know that transportation is it is a challenge at a lot of our schools. And these buses are not your typical school buses. They're activity buses, so they have less equipment and requirements to them. But if you play some schools, you'll see buses that are decked out, that are painted in school colors. Those are what you would consider an activity bus and not necessarily a school bus. Irrigation and additional upgrades. We've kind of got like this piecemeal irrigation across our county. And I know on the surface it may seem like, well, this is like a wish list, or we would just love to have. But if you go to certain facilities, it is a need. We hadn't had a rain in a considerable amount of time, and you'll catch coaches dragging hose pipes from the school all the way to their ball fields. And then we had some irrigation at some schools. People don't even know where the lines are. And so just getting something that's more comprehensive. Storage is a big issue. You see these, wooden buildings that are kind of falling in, dilapidated, doesn't look good. They've been donated, come from someone's house, so they've raised money, and they've just kind of deteriorated over time. Getting something that's more uniform, metal, bay doors. You can put your stuff in them. We can have enough for all athletic sports to utilize. And that was another one for that one. And then, of course, the Spring Hill High School piece of it, if that comes up. And, of course, mowers. We're asking and stepping up the accountability levels in our facilities. We're stepping up what we're requiring coaches to do. And so providing the necessary equipment to be able to maintain versus someone bringing a mower from their house or somebody donating something that's not going to last more than 2 to 3 months, but coming up with a plan for that. So there are a lot of price mowers out there, so really couldn't pinpoint a direct price, but that is something just for consideration to know that we're thinking and talking about.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsay.
These guys brought this at my request, so I'll take responsibility or fault or whatever. But I appreciate you guys doing it, appreciate the thought that you put into it. One reason I wanted to go ahead and bring it now and start the conversation, when we did it last year, by the time all the approvals happened, some of these projects we were trying to do, and they were trying to build a softball field in Mount Pleasant in February, and just the weather's not ideal. But the sooner we can get this, maybe we can get some better weather and get on with some of these projects. As you see in both lists that they brought, our needs far out exceed. And that's not even a word, but they exceed the money we're even talking about. I mean, Mr. Pointer brought us a couple of years ago, $15 million that we needed to get up to par when it comes to athletics. So we're eating this elephant a bite at a time, and And you guys hear me say it all the time, we can either have needs or we can have money, but in my opinion, we can't have both. And right now we have a lot of needs and we have a lot of money. So we need to put those funds to use. And I talked with Mr. Luconen. He promised me he wasn't going to shoot me if I made this request. So he's comfortable with it. I'm putting words in his mouth. Don't turn his light on. But I would like to see us move forward with this. That way we can get started with some of these projects. And I know Mr. Perriman, I talked about Mr. Pointer had $15 million worth of needs. Mr. Perriman's got $150 million worth of needs. I don't know what that number is, but it's definitely money that can be put to good use. And if you guys haven't been out and about at schools and see some of the improvements that have taken place, if you haven't been there in a little while, there may be some things that you don't even notice because there's been such a great change in them, and it just helps our kids, helps our coaches. So I appreciate what you guys do, and thanks for bringing it.
I say, just so y'all know, it's a great time to talk about this. Really what we talk about, and I'm going to say this, we talk about this daily, sometimes multiple times a day, where I'm in his office or he's in mine, and this is really what we're facing. We have needs that we don't even, we have nothing for the children. It just doesn't exist. We have things that are in such shape that they aren't safe for our children. And then we have things that are just necessary for the good culture and viability of a high school and a middle school athletic program. We're putting new scoreboards in all of our gyms that don't have new scoreboards this year. And I did that out of maintenance money because we were at Cullioca watching maintenance crawl up and put, white and red bulbs individually in scoreboards that have been limped along for the last 25, 30 years. And maintenance says we work on them almost sometimes between every game. And you look at that and you say, those kids, that's just somehow it's a mental thing with folks that this is nice, it looks good, it works, it's never a problem, we never have to say this was an issue. And everyone, no matter whether it's a brand new school or an old school, deserves that. So we're trying to balance between what we don't even have, what's not safe, and what's just right by our kids as we set new standards. And as we've built new buildings, and this is not a new phenomenon. All the way back when we built buildings when Cox was built, they had things that others didn't. Now we say they're lacking what others lack. It's how it works. But we have to be as mindful of our older buildings as we do our new buildings and say these are all of our children. So I do want you to know that's a constant conversation, is we don't just get hung up in one place, that we try to help. Now, I will tell you, when we got to Mount Pleasant High School this year, it just made sense. We're here. We can do a little bit more than we had planned because it's going to cost us more to have to come back later. But then when we walk away from that, we don't have to come back as soon as we're going to move on to another one, and we're going to do that. But just please know that even beyond he and I, it's a constant conversation of we were given money that was unexpected, and we have to do right by the community and you for giving it to us. But we always have to keep in mind that our student athletes, their safety and just their experience is very important to the day-to-day operations of the district.
All right, Mr. Howe.
So, Mr. Pointer, what was it about 3 years ago when we sat down at central office in the conference room and started this process? We started talking about the facilities plan and refining it and making it to what we finally ultimately approved. And I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of all the hard work that you've put in and the staff has put into this. It's finally coming to fruition. We've been like Mr. Lindsay said. We've been a bite at a time. We're going to eat this elephant, and we are. Just let me share with you the experience this year alone at Cullioca. The ball fields, all of them, the baseball fields, the softball fields, just simple things like paving the parking lots and then continuing that down to paving around the bleachers, paving around the concession stand, those boys and girls have a real facility. Now, I'm not saying we didn't have one before, but it's what we as parents built. It was gravel. That's not really good if you're pushing along a wheelchair or whatever. It's really hard to do when you've got 2 inches of 3/4 inch gravel to push that wheelchair. It looks like a real facility. The soccer field, which is what I really know the most because that's what my kids play. I cannot tell you. I work the concession stand. My wife and I work concession stand. That's just what we do to help out. The number of parents that came through there from opposing teams to say, wow, this looks nice. And it's not even done yet. Like the bleachers are brand new. They're still sitting in the parking lot facing the wrong direction. Okay? I mean, I understand that they haven't got there yet, and they will. I know they will. And I just keep telling people, hey, look, it's going to look, but when we get these bleachers put in, we're going to have a scoreboard. The vision is there, and it's coming to fruition. I never thought it would come to fruition this quickly. I really didn't. I mean, when we're only putting $500,000 at a time at it, I really thought we would be doing this for the next 20 years, and we still probably will because there's going to be needs that pop up. But when you have these facilities are more than just for our athletes. This is our front porch. When other communities come to our schools, they don't come to the front of the building. They don't get to see the inside of the building. They're coming to our ball fields. They're coming to all of our athletic facilities, and they're getting to see that, hey, Maury County's actually putting money into this, and it really is across the entire county starting to look like we have got some forethought and planning into it. And I believe you said that when you called around to try to figure out how to do this plan, no other community, no other district had a formal plan like we've come up with. And I just think that just shows that we've got a 5-year plan for all of our buildings. To my knowledge, we were the first government entity in Maury County to do that. So now we're the first school district to have a comprehensive plan of how we're going to take care of our athletic facilities. I don't know how you could get much more detailed and finite with what we have. We don't have infinite resources. So the fact that we have a comprehensive plan of how we're going to attack a $15 million problem a piece at a time and how we've come so far, my hat is off to you. It looks phenomenal. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to add just appreciation for the work that went into this. I do have a question, though. I'm assuming the first 2 pages or 3 maybe, are what you've identified as the most needed projects.
And so when we look at the most needed, also within the confines of the money that they told us to kind of explore when speaking with Mr. Perriman to kind of try to address, and then of course those needs, of course, and then trying to build that in, but also leaving for the board, based on our conversation previously, the last time this came around, just a 5-year overall, full comprehensive, in case there were some things that, we were asked to take under further consideration.
And the reason I'm asking is just because we've had quite a few discussions about Whitthorne's baseball situation, and that's not on this list anywhere.
So part of the reason why you don't see Whitthorne's baseball field on there, because it's a multifaceted situation. So, one, I do know and do understand and realize and appreciate and value the fact that Whitthorne wants their own athletic facilities, right? I'm a product of Whitthorne. My kids go to Whitthorne. My daughter plays softball. My son will be at Whitthorne, and my oldest daughter my middle daughter's on her way, and my oldest daughter's there. So I appreciate it. But when you build a ball field, right, you just don't want to put anything out there. And there's certain restrictions and limitations that will be there as a result of just us putting something there. And I don't want that to happen. But when you look at the standards that the board approved at a minimum, like the minimum standard that we will set is practice facilities for all of our middle schools. And if the board chose to add actual playing game facilities, then our standards go up to another notch that we then have to maintain that level of standard. And we've looked at it in multiple ways and multiple facets to be able to try to address. Now, I do know, as it pertains to the baseball field, there were questions about the utilization of Columbia Central High School. So what I did was I did have a lengthy conversation with the head baseball coach at Columbia Central, and I also talked to the previous year's coach, Coach Wooliver, about what was the relationship between the two. And in my conversation with Coach Wooliver, and I do know the utilization of that field, he said that they played approximately 10 games at Columbia Central High School, not this year, but last year when he was the head coach. He's no longer the coach there. He stepped down. Said he played 10 games. He had roughly about 13 games scheduled for home. 2 of them got canceled because of the Jim Painter Classic, and 1 of them was moved to Fairview Park because of a rainout game that was impacted by a district tournament. In my conversation with Central High School and the head baseball coach in particular, he's more than open and more than welcome to have the school come up there and utilize the facilities as they see fit. I think what the biggest issue was there was a communication breakdown when the staff changed hands. And what I mean by that is, for example, the prior athletic director that was there scheduled a baseball game on opening day of the high school game. So if you're scheduling a middle school game on the same day as the opening day of the baseball game, that game won't necessarily happen. So I think there are some communication things that we can work through, but that's one of the reasons why that you don't see it.
Well, and I understand the minimum standards and this and that, but we have our largest middle school in the county that is barely able to even function a baseball program because of the status of the way things are. And I think we need to do something to address that, whether it, we can improve our communication very nicely, but in the spring it better come through. And I think that's, I would rather see something tangible out there than just hope somebody's going to make some good decisions down the road. So, turn it over, Ms. Irvin.
Thank you, and I second your sentiments on that, Mr. Fulbright. I mean, it's very disheartening to players when they feel like they're always, looking for a home to play, because as well as I do, a home field very much, that has significance, and if it's going to be central, we need to make sure that cooperation is not just, we need to make sure it's in stone. So I appreciate anything you can do to assure that that's going to happen. If not, we may have to continue to explore what we can do to make that right with Whitthorne. But I know you're on that, and I know you'll do that because I know that's your home as well. I was going to share another little sentiment that, just to kind of give kudos to you guys and what we're doing. It's funny, this last Saturday we just happened to find ourselves in a northern Nashville community and not knowing where we're at, rode by a school, and I was like, stop, which is so funny when you get into things, and because the field was, we were right there at it, and I'm like, let me see their field, and the things that we're doing, I think we're really making progress, but it's so true that it is the face of a community. That's what people see, because a lot of even people who live in a community never see inside of a school building. So I'm really proud of what we're doing. We're really making great strides to make our schools, even in the most rural to the most, urbanized, we're trying to make that equal, and I appreciate our efforts, and I think we're doing good on that. I did want to ask, under other options for consideration, and I'm sure this is covered, but I have to ask to make sure we're represented. It says all middle and high school. I'm assuming that does also define our unit schools as middle and high schools. Is that correct?
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Pointer. I know this is a lot of hard work, and thank you for what you do.
Ms. Parker?
Mr. Pointer, I appreciate the work that you put into it, and I know you're trying to balance a lot of different things. What we don't have, what you're trying to make safe, what you're trying to make look nice. There's a lot going on there. I guess the issue that I have is when I look at this list, there's a lot of 5,000 here, 10,000 here, 25,000 here, 25. There's a lot of basketball goals, it looks like, that are getting changed out this year. And part of that is I'm just wondering what the plan is going forward. When we start changing things, it's like when we do the bleacher repairs. We know what the schedule is for that. Are we working on putting some of these things onto a set schedule where we know we're going to change out all the basketball goals this year and that's gonna happen every 5 years or 10 years or whatever that is, so that that can be planned for?
So yeah, so part of the thing that we have talked about is very similar to what we've done with the gym floors. And the same thing we've done with the outside facility maintenance is getting all of these things up to a standard and then creating a maintenance plan for all of them so that everything is on the same balance kind of schedule and that we know that we're maintaining and taking care of them. So we're not just going to kind of put it out there and just leave it and then neglect happens, then it costs you more in the long run. So yeah, that's the part of our continuous conversation that we're having downtown.
If and we're appreciative of everything, but I just speak in the larger term. If we knew we had a consistent funding source year to year, say even if it's just $1 million instead of the $2 million, but you know you're getting that every year, you become a lot more. You plan differently than just. We know right now. Last year we got $2 million. That's all we knew was we were getting $2 million. So we tried to make sure we're not leaving facilities out. We didn't wholeheartedly just come in and saturate one and say, let's fix everything. So you see small things like $5,000 for things here and there because we're trying to ensure that we didn't leave something that was most needed off right now. But we also were saying, I mean, he's down to $6,000 in the $2 million that's left. That's how much has not been spent or accounted for right now. So we've tried to be very diligent that we're spending all of that, but knowing nothing else is promised. And I know you guys are working very hard, and you're very dedicated to taking care of this. But even this year, if you were to give us money, we don't know if more money would come next year. So how we spend that is not, it's different than if we knew there was an income that was never stopping. And so that's one of the things we face too is, let's not short those older facilities. Let's not leave someone out. We've got something we have to do. I mean, we have a long list that of things that we know just need to be made safe, and then so you have to balance that with how much we're doing of that, how much we're fixing things and giving people things they didn't have to do. But that's been a conversation that we've had that he drives he's very diligent about saying, you know, we need to do this, we need to do this, and we've tried to do that. But that's not a knock on y'all, but just it's kind of the same thing we told the county commission. If we knew we had maintenance money coming from them every year, you spend it differently than if you just know it's a one-time gift, seemingly. So that's kind of why we ended up where we were.
Right. Well, and I will just say though, one concern that I have is that when we try to take care of everything, big projects don't get done. Santa Fe does not get a gym for how long? Santa Fe been open? That they've been asking for it. So, okay, so that's at least 20 years. So, going on 25. So, what I'm saying is, when we're talking about these projects and we have big projects that need to be done, and we're paving past the problem in some instances. I'll use Central as an example because the first thing on here is to have paving up to the practice fields. I'll be honest with you, and I told Chris this today, I don't care if anybody can get up to the practice field. Like, I don't. Like, I assume that all those kids are going to have to lug their stuff up. I don't care if moms or dads or anybody can go up there. I care that they have access to it at the game, and I think that's what we should focus on. But in the meantime that we're paving to get up to the practice field, we're going right past the tennis courts that have, I don't know what you want to call that. I mean, a jungle. So, you know, it's really hard for me because I know that the tennis courts are going to cost a lot. I know that that's going to be expensive, but at the same time, at what point do we say, I mean, we're making something not be an eyesore over here, but we're just completely ignoring a huge eyesore at another place. And I don't know how we balance that, but I think that's part of where, when we're having these conversations, like, there's a lot that needs to be done at Central and at Whitthorne. And I'll be honest, with the money that we took out last year, it was, I mean, how much got spent at Whitthorne last year? It was less than $50,000, I would say.
Coming out of my money as well, because we've got gym work that's going to be done this summer that we funded out of maintenance because that was indoor. We're working on facilities, that type of thing and stuff. But I understand what you're saying.
You see where I'm coming from. So it's not that I don't like what we're doing, but at the same time, I understand we need a regular funding source, and we need to find a way to prioritize putting these things in, because, you know, the kids that, you know, are playing one sport, we have other kids that are playing sports and they don't have access to playing surfaces. And I just, that boggles my mind, that we're wanting to upgrade certain areas for kids to have nicer playing surfaces that they should have, but at the same time we're willing to just completely ignore playing surfaces that people cannot even utilize.
So let me address first the eyesore. I'm hoping, now this doesn't solve any problem other than just ugliness, okay? I'm hoping those tennis courts are gone by the end of the summer. That's our goal, is that they not be there. Unfortunately, that doesn't fix them. And to fix them where they are, as we've looked through it and as we've studied it, is a much larger process than just fixing the surfaces themselves. There's a major water issue over there that is really hampering us on being able to do that right and it be a good surface. This is something I'm gonna say, and this is nothing towards anyone in the past, and I don't do disclaimers well because I just say what I say. When you piecemeal things together, our softball field at Spring Hill High School has a river that runs through it. But what happened was it was not funded, and it was left to coaches to do themselves. That's something that's across our district. And when you come in to fix them, there are tons of things that we get ready to look at it and we go, it's unfixable to be maintained, safe, and to the standard at which we hope to maintain for our district. It would simply be better at Central to move the tennis courts. We know that. We can put them elsewhere. We've talked about that. We know where we would put them, but that's something that would happen. We'll always take more money, always, because we'll spend it. And I know Doug probably freaked out right then. But, in fact, he popped up on my screen. It's a different thing, but he was haunting me right then. The other thing I will say, too, though, this was our recommendation. Please know this. We work at your will. If you earmark projects that are more important to you than others as a group, we're always going to attack those with zeal and with the forthright to try to get those done first.
Interrupt to ask my question then, because that's exactly it. Is this a document that we have to vote on at any point?
No.
That's what I thought.
No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Howe?
So, two things, and I think this is why we have this, is because, I mean, Ms. Parker is going to advocate for Central. That's her main area. No, absolutely, no, I'm not, no. I'm going to advocate for Culleoka. That's where I grew up. That's where my kids go. That's where I'm an advocate for all students, but when it comes down to certain things, yeah, we're going to advocate for the schools that we know, we love, we want to go to. So, I mean, and that's why I do like this right here, because it takes us out of it and it lets us focus on what is most important to the district.
Please remember as well, and I don't mean to cut you off, but one thing to remind, in our capital plan that we took to the county commission, we have asked for $5 million for the next 3 years, so a total of 15. And our mindset with that would be, if that funding came through in a large chunk, that's when we would have. I mean, we know we have to address the Spring Hill High School football stadium. It's not I kind of think we might too, or it might look better. It has to be done. We know the tennis courts. We know those things exist that are large scale, and it tracks. And we know different types of things that are wishes that you've talked about. We've looked at this money more as kind of getting our current things up to par, and then those large items. I mean, you saw the estimate on a track. That's not, this wouldn't even do it. So, I mean, that would be something we would bring back to you guys in some way, that either the county commission would be kind enough to give that money, or it would come through a different funding source. But this was really looking at just pushing everything we had forward and trying to get it to a better place.
Mr. Forward, I want to thank you for bringing up Whitthorne baseball. This really, it bothers me a lot. I like to think that I'm a fair and equitable person, and I don't. I don't understand, like, we have schools across this district that share athletic fields, have for, I don't know, 100 years. Culleoka's one of them. So, I'm just not seeing why there's an issue and why there's a problem. There shouldn't be, because I think maybe we have a problem with maybe coaches thinking that these are their fields, and that they can, we need to remind them that these belong to Maury County Public Schools, and we can choose to let people use them as we see fit. And I do not, for the life of me, cannot even fathom why Central High School would even not allow the very students that are going to feed directly into them to use that field, or, you know, there's miscommunication or whatever. It bothers me. Like, it really bothers me a lot that literally there are schools here every day that do this exact same thing that we're just asking them to do. And from what I understand, this isn't like the first year. This has happened multiple years in a row, dating back at least 8 years. So, I mean, I'm not yelling at y'all. I'm not sure what the disconnect is. Why there would even be a disconnect? Or I mean, anyway, I just want to make sure we get that worked out. Thank you.
Mr. Moore. And again, this would be up to the board to agree to this. Would it be possible for you guys to bring us back to address Ms. Parker's concerns, what some annual funding numbers would look like to both meet these smaller needs and to start to get at some of the big ones? Because, I mean, I understand what you're saying. If we're going to be haphazard about it, and I think Mr. Lindsay's kind of talked about this in the past about, you know, we try to do what we can, but I would like to know kind of what would be our baseline, because we've talked about this with just maintenance of facilities. We've talked about this with devices. What is our maintenance to keep this going per year? And I think it's probably we're at a point where we should be talking about what should be our annual, what is this board, and that it would be what this board would be having to agree to, and that's going to be somewhat independent of what the county commission gives us funding for. But if we as a board are serious about this, we should be able to say, unless something crazy happens, we're going to commit this amount of money per year, so you guys can start to do some planning that I think would include some of these bigger projects. So can you guys bring us some numbers?
We can. Can I clarify something with that request? You know, we've talked about a $4.5 million is what we really see on the maintenance side, just to work on that EMG list and to stay where we should be taking care of our facilities. That's on the maintenance side. That never ends.
Yes.
Because our facilities are constant. What my question would be on the front end of doing that for athletics is, what would be your timeline to get everything to a standard? Because then that changes to maintaining that standard rather than building up. And right now, we have quite a lengthy list of needs. We tie this together with a conversation, Chris and I talked about this morning, that you had actually requested we talk about in the future. As we add sports to schools, one of the considerations we have to ask is, do they have the facilities and can they maintain that? Whereas in the past, we've just said, do you got a coach? Go do it. And then what happens is down the road, you know, somebody that was all in on the front end, they leave when their kid's gone, and then that changes. So my question would be in setting that up was timeline just on getting to that, and then maintaining it becomes a different animal at that. I think those are two different budget numbers.
They are. I'm not sure, because I'm not sure how scary that number is going to be when it comes back. I'll just be honest.
It's $15 million is what it is right now.
So I guess my initial, what I would be considering is just if understanding that we've to this point done just a haphazard, what do we have left over in the bank, or what do we have to give? I think I'm just looking for a consistent number that at least starts to get us ahead. And maybe you give us a range that's above that. Maybe there's a starting point. We need to be, you know, maybe you come back to us and say, you know what, we need to have at least $1.5 million a year to meet the repair needs of our fields, the maintenance needs, you know, mowers, the things like you're talking about. But then we need another dollar figure to start getting ahead. And once we know what that dollar figure is, that kind of tells us how long it takes us to chip into the $15 million.
And what we can do that.
Okay.
How that might look on the front end is saying that out of say $2 million, that we pick one large project that we saturate a lot to, and then we work to until we meet.
Sure.
So, but we'll
And
bring
again, I
that,
think
and
that depends on how scary the number is.
we'll
and
bring
what
it
our
in.
case
We'll
for
bring
that
it in increments. This is what it would look like to get there in 5. This is what it would look like
Okay.
to get there in 7. This is what it would look like
And
to
I
get
don't
there in 10.
expect this to be a, right now thing. I think this is a kind of a long discussion we're gonna have and figure out what our.
Would this be something that would be more appropriate, and Mr. Fulbright, I'm asking, as we work to our fall retreats and we talk
Sure.
about capital, that we build from now to then, that's a truly a large-scale discussion at that capital retreat?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, with that said, I would like to go ahead and put this on the regular meeting for June to maybe go ahead and get some funds in their hands. Still have the meeting in the fall or whenever, but with the understanding that we go ahead and get some funds.
Okay. Mr. Lindsey?
I could say a bunch, but I'll refrain from it right now. But I think we as a board need to be really careful about micromanaging what our staff has recommended. When Mr. Perriman comes and says some school needs floor tiles or they need ceiling tiles, we don't really have, he don't get any feedback from us on that because we don't know. We don't really know about this. We think we do. But I'll be honest with you. I've looked at the list. I really don't care what the list is. I know there's $15 million worth of needs. I have confidence in those guys that they can do their job, and I have confidence that they're going to do what's best for what they think's best. That's what they get paid to do. If you ask me to give a $2 million list of what I think should be done, it's not going to look like this. That's not my job to do that. That's their job to do it. So I think we better be very careful about trying to micromanage what they do because it takes 6 votes to do anything. And like I said, if we're talking about giving them $2 million to take off and run with, knowing that there's 7 times that amount of need out there, so there's plenty to be done. But
Thank you very much, Ms. Parker.
I don't disagree with you, Mr. Lindsey. I will say, though, that it requires 6 votes if it gets to the point where it requires our approval. There's a lot of things that can be done under $25,000, and you can spend a lot of 5, 10, 15, 20 before you ever come to us, and then big projects can't be done. And I do think that for when we do have big projects that have to be done, we also have to be, like Mr. Howell said, we do have to answer to our constituents. And I mean, I have to field calls from people about why Whitthorne doesn't have a baseball field. Again, I'm not saying that they're going to get a baseball field this year, next year, or the year after. Hopefully there's a plan in place that makes sure that they will at least have a playing surface that they can play regular games on. And that can be addressed internally. But, I mean, I'm not trying to micromanage, but I'm also trying to say we have big projects that are out there, and if we don't have a vision for those and how those get addressed, I mean, we can replace floor tiles all we want to, and the roof can be caving in on us at all of our schools. So we got to think about it holistically, I think.
Thank you very much. Did this incorporate your maintenance proposal as well? Do we need to add anything to that discussion? I see. I'm loud enough, I didn't even realize that one. No. We have a cooperative bid that we found that we can purchase off of that gives us access to like 15 vendors instead of 1. So we're trying to be mindful as we work through that to make sure that we're buying what we need and we're getting the best price on it. And then this is something that we see too, that most folks would look at us and go, you're crazy. Randolph Howell, E.A. Cox, and Riverside have outside doors on all their classrooms. Riverside on one side. Randolph Howell has every door. Cox has every door. They weren't very good doors. We are having issues
in many ways with those two buildings and really feel like we've got to start the process of replacing every outside door on those two buildings to be safe, to be secure, and to be efficient with our HVAC system. So you see those things on there. We budgeted, I said, $500,000 for doors. $500,000 doesn't touch the doors on those two buildings, on those three buildings, but it starts to move us those way. So those are things that we're being mindful of as well, that we're going to do what we can, and we move that forward.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
This is going to tie in with that. I know lately I've heard a couple different things, comments from teachers, and this is not anyone specific, but I think this is more of a kind of a learning point for all of us. And you bring up the chairs that have been there almost as long as I've been alive, which is scary. But I think one of the things that, and I don't know if it's, again, maybe we're back to a communication breakdown, but I hear about things like this from various schools, and I hear people say, well, why aren't you replacing this? Well, to be honest, if we don't know about that, and when I say we, I mean the body that sits up here that actually has to approve funding on it. So I don't know if we need to figure out a better way to make sure, because I know there's a fine line, and just that doesn't mean everybody needs to email you guys tomorrow and complain about every single thing under the moon. But I think there needs to be some awareness by all of our staff that we need to have a good flow of communication so we can get those things in the queue and evaluate, is this a want, is this a need, does it really need to be replaced? And then it can make its way to us so we can figure out how do we fund that if it really is something that needs to be changed. Because I hear all the time about things, and I don't make a call on what those are, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands there is a process in place. You guys have that, but the information has to flow for us to be able to kind of make some decisions on these things.
And can I give you an example? We sent out an email and said, we're looking at a furniture purchase. Please send us your furniture needs. We started getting emails back. I was at a school, actually walking down the hall with a principal, and said something about a chair. And I said, did you turn that in? And they said, no, I didn't want to ask. And so, honestly, that comes from years and years and years of being told you ain't getting anything. And that's just the truth. And I say that as a principal of the past. You're asking, somebody's going to say, whatever. I think that's a different mindset. I know that is from you guys. But we did ask, and then we had to say, no, you do need to turn this in. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yes, please, because of what you just said. We can't fix it if you're not telling us.
Okay. Thank you very much. I believe that takes care of the major maintenance proposal. Oh, did you suggest to Mount Pleasant Middle that they could share chairs with the high school? Never mind. We'll go on to the next.
I do have a bunch of wobbles that I'm trying to place them.
Proposed deed for Battle Creek land conveyance to the county. You guys have already. Wait, what's the question?
Sorry, I know Mr. Sims had asked for us to put it on the agenda to talk about the athletics, to go ahead and start pulling money out. Are we wanting to, I don't know what Doug's comfortable with. Is there a number that he's comfortable with on this maintenance side? Or those two numbers?
What's the total being proposed? $4 million? I'm fine with $4 million. $6 million? Oh. $5 million's fine. Yeah, I feel more comfortable with $5 million. 6 is close. I know we're not spending it all at once. That's a good thing. It gives us time as we move across the year and earn more money. But I would be good with $5 million.
Okay. We'll move that on to discussion at the full board meeting then.
The deed that's here, we worked with Mr. Wooliver. You guys approved the last document that we brought you that was just the basic document that says this is the land conveyance we're proposing to give to the county. Mr. Wooliver's actually worked up and has a deed here. We would be conveying, and Jake, you tell me if I'm wrong, I believe it's 88 acres in total, 87.88 acres. That does meet the obligation that we set at the beginning of the contract, all the way back to the Spring Hill contract. We did work with, and we mentioned this last time, with the County Parks Department to make this a more advantageous land split for both of us. In this, the county would get the road. They would get Battle Creek Way with a right-of-way all the way from Malon Moore all the way to Hummingbird. They would also get all lands on the elementary side of the creek. The high school side of the creek would remain with us, which is very advantageous for us. The actual dividing line would be in the center of the creek. So that would kind of be from there. There's a map with this, and Jake, you tell me if I'm leaving anything out. It just needs your approval for him to move forward to the county.
And what I'll do is, if you approve, or unless there's a significant amount of feedback tonight, I'll share this with the county attorney and try to get him to start their process on acceptance. So, it may or may not hit the agenda for the next meeting, but if you approve of the deed, it'll get back on there as soon as they're ready to take it. It is 87.88 acres. That does include the roadway. So you're conveying the deed, the dirt underneath the roadway. You are taking back an easement, just in case that never goes public for whatever reason. Then you'll always have the right to use it. There are no reversion clauses in this deed. I know there was some discussion on that on the front end. You've done reverter or reversion clauses that would bring the property back to you under certain situations, but those have almost always been when you were donating that property to somebody else for some purpose. This I treat more as a sale or a quid pro quo, given that they've built your road and your bridge there. So that's what you have in front of you.
Okay, Ms. Irvin?
I operate with caution, so I just like to ask the questions. I'm confident this is probably just so that they can take on the maintenance of such, and I completely support that. But I do want to ask, and I'm sure this is just a given, but I want to hear it. This is still giving us plenty of future expansion space, like for fields, any even unforeseeable future need that we could think of that campus would need. We're not going to be hurting ourselves long term. Can you confirm that, please?
Ma'am, the bulk of the land that would be transferred over to the Parks Department is in the floodplain, so it would not be a viable building site for us in the future. It could be something that a ball field could go on or something like that. But it's it's good for parkland, it's good for cropland, it may have some other uses, but right as far as putting a building on. So yes, on the middle school side, on the high school side, we're gonna have all of the usable land that we could expand on or grow on at our convenience. And Mr. Fulbright, just so you know, I spoke to Chairman Morrow at length about this. He's good with the time. As Jake said, this may not be on their next meeting. He said he wasn't rushed. He just wanted to make sure it was okay. But Ms. Irvin, yes, ma'am, we'll have everything that would be usable that we would need.
Well,
this does keep, by the way, the road frontage up on Malon Moore that you guys have discussed since the very beginning of purchase of the property. That could be a possible building site or could be something that could be used for other purposes. It does keep that in here.
So, and forgive me for maybe not seeing, but this includes, like, we would have land remaining for plenty of athletic fields for the sports that we feel like, so there would be, all of that would be covered with what
Yes,
we
ma'am.
have remaining, just making
ma'am.
sure. Thank you.
Is this something that would need to be voted on separately, or could it be in the consent?
Consent's fine, if it's the will of the board.
All right, consent it is. 5-year plan update?
The next thing we had, you guys had asked us to bring back the 5-year plan at the midpoint of the year, and with the voting meeting being in June, I wrote you a memo here. You will see a couple things as you read through it. One, we have met within the last couple of weeks and had discussions with all 3 municipalities as well as the county. Had a great meeting with the City of Mount Pleasant. Have been to City of Columbia Technical Committee meetings, have met with in the last 3 weeks, and just so Mr. Fulbright and I had this conversation today, we suddenly have developers coming to the central office and asking for meetings and wanting to talk about different options and ways that they see that they could maybe help the schools. I'm never going to commit you to anything. But I'm always going to field an offer if someone says, hey, I got some land you might could have for a school down the road. I'll always say, okay, let's talk about that. Mr. Fulbright, we're including him in those meetings moving forward so that you do have a representative in the room. Those things are happening. We talked with the City of Spring Hill. We've hit warp speed on growth. I mean, and even in the last 6 weeks, the conversations and the things that are coming up. Technical Committee for Columbia had 2,500 rooftops on it this month. City of Mount Pleasant says that they're going to go from 5,000 residents to 10,000 in the next 5 years. So we're seeing growth that's not Spring Hill growth. And we've always talked about Spring Hill, and we've always said when it hits other places, we've got a problem. In this letter that I wrote to you, and again, this will just be my recommendation, I said to you that at this moment tonight or in June, I don't see a building that we need to add to your 5-year plan. What I do see are conversations that we need to start tonight and build to that retreat in the fall to have a big conversation that would then allow us to make decisions on what to add in the January meeting. I will share this if you give me permission with the commission so that they see where we are, just to say this is what we're talking about. But you see at the bottom of the list, these are the 4 things that are on my radar right now that are new or that have increased since we talked about in last fall at the retreat. One is middle school seats to serve current Columbia zones. I think we have lots of options on how we can do this, but I'm going to tell you that Cox and Withorn cannot handle the growth that's coming, so we have to do something. Elementary, middle, and high school seats to serve the new growth on Trotwood over to Highway 43. This would be south of Food Lion and north of the Mount Pleasant city limits, and there's quite a bit coming. It's not, some of it's been approved, some of it's in the approval process. That side of town is going to change greatly. Number 3, elementary and high school seats to serve new growth in Mount Pleasant, and we see that coming. And then this one is the one that crept back on that I almost didn't even want to type back onto the list, but if we start looking out maybe 5 to 7 years, we're going to have another elementary school in Spring Hill. And I know no one wants to hear that, but it's going to happen. And those numbers are getting silly. I'm working on verifying some stuff for up there right now. So I would just give these conversations to you to start thinking about, to start looking at. If you have questions, I will keep you updated as things change as far as things that have been approved or things that have been asked for. And I think that if we follow that through the summer and we get into the fall, this is a good guiding point for our conversation then. I do expect there will be something in the fall that we need to really have a big conversation about that's not on here tonight. But those are the 4 things that I see that could be potentially added to your 5-year plan when we meet in January.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Okay, so 2 things real quick. I kind of like the direction this new document's going. That it's more conversational and less of just a raw list. As we talk about a lot, I think the list gets used against us. I think this does a better job of kind of laying out what we're seeing, and it's not just the specific. I mean, it's kind of going into a conversation which we should be having with our funding body anyway on an ongoing basis. Second on this, kind of unrelated, I had a constituent reach out to me about, I guess, I don't know if it was Murray County or if it was the Columbia City, where they asked for input from us, and it said no comment from the school system. And I know that's something we've talked about in the past. I did reply back to the constituent that one of the issues we've had is they've said they've sent us things, and I don't think they always do. Is there some way, in my understanding of where we're at right now, is there is just no way we can handle all of the things that have been approved, not just in Columbia, not just in Murray County, but also Spring Hill as well. How do we make sure, because I guess I'm looking at this from a citizen standpoint, because I've been reached out. There's been several large proposed developments in the Spring Hill area. Their citizens are very upset about, and although it isn't really our realm, it kind of is, because I want to make sure that we're getting information out to the public that we just can't handle all of this without some change. There has to be a change somewhere, and we don't have that yet. So I don't know if you guys have any ideas. This isn't. I don't know the solution. If we can a standing letter to every one of these entities that we just can't handle all of the growth you're approving, maybe that's the appropriate thing we need to do.
So my thought on this, and we've actually spoken at length about this, is that as staff for Murray County Public Schools, it is not our place to tell someone where they can and cannot build a home. Now, and I've said this to the commission, if you go back and look, I do believe it's the commission's responsibility to have a conversation with Columbia, Mount Pleasant, and Spring Hill. I think as elected officials, you guys can voice an opinion that carries a lot more weight than just us saying, hey, we're full. We're full. If everything builds that's approved today, we can't do it, and we know we can't do it. But we also look at that and say, we are bound by law to educate the children that come to us. So when they get here, we have to take them. It doesn't matter where they came from or where they're from, and they are ours. They are Murray County students when they get here, day one. So we have to take them in. I do believe that as a board, if you chose to write a letter, or individually, as elected officials, that carries much more weight than just staff members.
Sure.
So, I mean, when you complain in a restaurant, you ask for the owner or the manager, not the person who brought the sandwich, right? I mean, so that's us. That's my opinion. That she can expand upon that if you want, but I do think that it's not ours to say you can't do that. What we have to do is say, if they did that, what would we do? I will say this, and I had conversation with the previous director. We've had conversation. We just recently in the fall in the late fall, early fall, got asked to start coming to Columbia to the meetings. And I will tell you, Columbia's got the most growth. Columbia has the most information. They really do keep up with what's going on, and I can go to their websites, I can go to their maps and glean very quickly what's happening. It may be happening faster than I can keep up with sometimes, but I can get there. We go to the technical committee for Columbia, which is really all of the departments getting together and saying, these are the plans for a community and will it work, right? Water department says there's proper flow so that the fire hydrants will work. The cul-de-sacs are large enough to turn around emergency vehicles. Do they have enough electricity? It's really technical. I mean, it's what it is. It's the technical, and we're there from the school side to take part in that. So we have two dual roles while I'm there. One, is it safe? And we've voiced that when we felt that something wasn't designed that we could safely take kids to and from. You know, we get them home. We can't circle this. We can't maneuver this. This isn't in the best interest of children. The second thing that we can do is say, this neighborhood would be, and I'm just going to say, this neighborhood would be zoned to Randolph Howell, EA Cox, and Spring Hill High School. And they are, at current time, if you add out all the communities, will not be able to handle more growth without rezoning or more seats. Now, here's the problem. Some of those communities may not be built out for 4 or 5 years. Some may be built out in a year. If you look at Cox's numbers right now, they can handle kids today. So it's hard to have a conversation about a specific neighborhood and object to a specific neighborhood when maybe the totality of the situation could be addressed. And I am going to say maybe you guys are more suited to address that with Jake or through yourselves.
I mean, to
than
finish
through
my
us.
point on that, I mean,
yeah.
Although I'm now stuck thinking about you as the sandwich guy. So you did
Do
it
I not
yourself.
look like a sandwich guy?
I would be interested in this board maybe looking at drafting some kind of letter that we could sign off on. Because I know we don't have a lot of power, but I think we need to inform.
Well, I think
we need to get some information.
We've
on
got more power than we think. I went to the Columbia Planning Commission, whatever night it was last week, where 1,000 people showed up, and let them know, number one, they don't hear from us as often simply because every time we come say the same thing. We're near capacity, and whether you approve it or not, we've got to educate those children. So we appreciate you asking, but we know we can't stop it. One of the things that did happen was that one of the major developments that was being proposed, they were asked to defer until they could talk more with the schools. I have had a few conversations with some developers, and I would like to see us explore some ways in which we can get them involved in making their presence known in our community in a positive way, rather than just draining our resources. So we are having those conversations. I'm going to the County Planning Commission Monday night, or whenever it is, Tuesday, Monday, and we'll share that same exact message. In fact, I'm taking my same exact notes from the other night. But I think it's important to know that the school board is not necessarily opposed to any of the developments or any growth, but it has to be done, and we have to have help. The county commission can only raise taxes so much before there's a revolt. And impact fees are just a long shot at this point, too. So that's where we're going to have to think outside the box on some creative concepts that maybe have never been tried before.
Just as a note, and I said this to the commission the night we were there, I see a difference in what's happening, and I said that in the last 6 weeks it's really picked up, but I see a difference in conversation now. We've had conversations with developers all along. We're having more now than we've ever had. Here's the difference. When they come and they give me their business cards, they're not from here. They didn't fly from Phoenix to maybe build a couple of houses. They came and they bought land, and they're going to build houses. And they say, we've done this. We've been through communities. We know what you're facing because you're the 100th community that we've done this to, or we've worked in. Done this to did not sound very good, did it? But they understand, and they understand that when they say we're here and people are going to come out in droves, but they know what they're doing. And I don't say that lightly. The conversations are very different. And so what I think our objective is always, and what I always say to them is, I want to see smart growth. I want to see growth that is in cooperation with everyone, not just something that pops up overnight and then is just there. So, again, I say that just to say it's a different group of people. One of them came and I felt like I had a local handler. I met with them. They didn't like what I said, and then when they came back, the guy was from here, and he's working with them. So I felt like maybe they found somebody that sounded like me to come talk to me, you know. So it's a different world out there right now.
Ms. Irvin.
So I've got a lot to say about this. This is not really in my lane. I'm not a county commissioner. I'm not in funding, but I tell you, most of you know my line of work. Every day I begin my day watching nationwide economics from the top industry leaders with housing. Here's the problem. One thing is that what I hear from community and stakeholders is fear, because people don't want to have their taxes raised. I understand. Because the fear is that that's going to cost them more money. It's not about taxes being raised, it's about what it's going to cost. So I say this to say there's only one solution. Let me tell you, starting homes, if you even want to consider it a starting home in Murray County, is $300,000. The median home is around $500,000. 2 years ago, we considered that crazy. And I'm passionate about this because I do this. Home values have risen within the last 18 months 26%. Do you know why? It's called supply and demand. Our kids are not going to be able to live in Murray County because homes keep going up. The only way to change that, we've got to build more houses. And I know that that's not the popular opinion, but that's what the top economists say. Because if we had more homes, home values, supply and demand, it would level out. So really, I know we've got to find a way to keep up with it, but that's it. We've got to find a way to keep up with it. Because just saying we're not going to build, we're going to shut these projects down, we're not going to have more rooftops, then our $300,000 starter homes are going to become like California. We're going to be having $800,000 starter homes, and we're all going to be looking to live, I don't know where. But it's a whole bigger process than just. I know we got to get the resources. It's water, it's everything. I don't know the key, but I know that just saying no more growth is only going to hurt us because there's two scales to that. That's my personal opinion from a very researched philosophy.
Okay, thank you. I want to reiterate, I never once said that we were opposed to any development taking place. I did, however, point out that they're going to be selling these $500,000 homes, and then their kids are going to be going to school in trailers. So we're going to need some help in order to make this happen. Mr. Sims.
Thank you. I have to disagree with you, Ms. Irvin. I'm on board with slowing down, but Mr. Perryman, to me, you're our guy, and if you can't tell the city that we can't take the growth, then I don't know that me going and telling them that we can't take the growth is going to help. I mean, you are to me, you are our liaison for that. I don't know if you want us to say go forth and tell them whatever, but to me that should be.
You need to go forth. Our line of work is every child, every day. I cannot look at a parent Mr. Perryman cannot look at a parent and say, we're closed, we're full. Our premise is public education.
I realize that, but that's not at all what I'm saying. We can say we're full. I mean, we can say we are going to be in trouble if we build these buildings. We'll educate them. I'm not saying we won't. It might not be a quality education. I mean, that's okay to tell them, I feel like.
Now, those additional seats may be in a new building, they may be in a renovated building, they may be in an expanded, they may be in a portable. But that's really where we are, is that I can say that to them. I don't want to say you can't come, but I can strongly on your behalf say this is where we are. I just see, I'll keep that opinion to myself, but if you want, without saying you can't come, we can express to them, and I do think that if you voiced that in some sort of cohesive letter or independently, that then that carries more weight when we do say, I'll give you an example. There, in technical committee last week, there was a neighborhood that's proposed that when I look at it, it's a Mount Pleasant neighborhood. It's going to be in the city of Columbia. There's no way we can serve it in the city of Columbia. I said that out loud. I see this being a Mount Pleasant neighborhood. And heads turned toward me faster than I had ever seen them turn. It was like, what are you saying? And an immediate conversation has begun about, we can give you land. Now, I don't know we got any money to build a school on it, but hey, we'll talk about that. But we can say to you, this may shift you to not where you think it is. This is the conversation we've had with you, that no longer can you build or buy a house thinking I'm going to go to this school, because that's going to change, and it's going to change all the time. But those conversations are 2,500 rooftops in this last month alone on the technical committee. They won't build them all tomorrow, but even if they build them out over 6 years, that's 1 month. And as I said to the commission the other night, and I will say the commission was, the budget committee was very willing to hear us, and they know that there's something that they have to work on. The problem is, as you said, Mr. Fulbright, they're limited in where they can go to get funds, and that really puts a on everybody. But there's just so much happening so quickly. 2,500 this month. It won't be that every month, but by the time we could open an elementary school on the north side, there's 24 to 36 more months of those meetings with the potential of a proposal that would have that much on it. And so when I talk to community members, or when I talk to the commission and to you guys, and we say we need to build this elementary school on the north side, that's a minimum of 24 months. And that's if we could get money and land tomorrow, probably more like, 36. And so what's National Highway going to look like in 24 to 36 months? It sure looks a lot different than it did 24 to 36 months ago. So we can say what you want us to. I'm like Ms. Ventura, I hesitate to say no, because the other thing I hesitate to say is this: Mr. Pointer, all of our folks work daily with City of Mount Pleasant, with City of Columbia, with City of Spring Hill, with the county government. You saying that to them as elected officials carries the weight of the people that you represent. Us saying that represents the jerk that I've got to be in a meeting with tomorrow. It's a different conversation. I don't say that. It's just a different conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would just want to point out, we got one last light on. This is something that we can take up at our retreat in September. That is normally scheduled, or has been the last couple of years, the third Saturday of September. But we'll set that date a little closer to time. And, this is not a plan we have to approve this month, so let's keep that in mind.
And it was meant, as Mr. Moore said, more as a conversation starter.
And I like that, and we have conversed it quite a bit. Mr. Howell.
So, I mean, I've lived in Murray County all my life. Never in a million years did I think that we'd be in this situation. I could tell that the growth was coming, maybe not this fast. I guess what I'm thinking is, as you sit here and you talk to us, you're in meetings with these developers. They're meeting with you for a reason. They want your blessing. And in fact, I sat there last night and watched 2.5 hours of that exact planning meeting. Well, that developer all but said you blessed it. I mean, he said, well, I've talked to them and they were very favorable to it. I guess what I'm missing is, I'm not saying that you say, oh, doors are closed, no more. But maybe it's not coming across that we have a plan for growth, but we have no funding for growth. And so we can plan. In fact, we have planned. We've got more plans than the county has even thought of having plans. But unfortunately, we don't fund those plans. We're a non-taxing authority. We can't raise or levy any kind of taxes. We can't. So all we do is just take money that was given to us. We have to go beg for money to do anything with our plans. In fact, our current plan, we asked for $56 million, and they said, well, here's 50, which is about how it works. I mean, look at our operating budget. We asked for 123. Well, here's 112. I may be off on the numbers, but anyway, that's how it works. That's how we're always going to work until we figure something else different. So I guess I'm not asking you to say we're closed, but I am asking you to say we as a school system have absolutely no way to take in, just say this one development, I don't know, 400 kids. We really have no way of doing that, because there's also this other development and this other development and this other development, and guess what? Now it's not just 400 kids, it's 1,000 kids. And are they going to build tomorrow? No, they're not. It's going to be gradual. But even if they did build tomorrow, realistically, we don't, in those zones, have anywhere to go. And then we have to rezone. Not a problem. But that requires more buses. And once again, we go back to, we ask for X number of buses, but we don't get X number of buses. We get X number minus 5. So the reality is we can't fund. I don't even know that we have money to fund portable learning cottages. That's what I want to call them. That sounds better than portables. So we can't even put them in a trailer, because we don't even have a trailer. I mean, we have some trailers at central office that is being used as office space. So I mean, I think there's some over at central maintenance, but once again, I think they're full of books. So I mean, where are we going to get the money to buy these trailers to put them in these schools? Because the last time I looked, you can't just drag this trailer out for free, and we don't have the capacity to do that, and then hook them up to, at least power. Water and sewer would be nice, but at least power for free. I don't know where we would get the money for portables. So
we're not going to solve that tonight, probably.
No, that's what I'm saying. So the point is, when we go and talk to these people, it's very important to say, we have plans galore. We would love to accommodate every one of your wishes. But unfortunately, the reality is, we can't even temporarily house these kids in portables, because we don't even have the money to do that at this point. So,
thank you. Mr. Lindsay, you'll be the last light.
Can I say one thing?
It is very quick, you can say.
Just so you know, I'm pretty blunt with y'all, and I've never been accused of being the most lovable person in the world. Please know that I do tell them how we feel about this. That's not always what they tell everybody else. They're going to come in and they're going to say they want to meet with us to, one, be able to say they met with us, and two, that we knew what was coming and that we're working on it. It doesn't matter what we say, but just please know, if I'm going to be blunt with you twice a month, I promise you I'm blunt with them the first time I've ever met them.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lindsay.
It seems like we're kind of beating up staff over something that I'm failing to understand. That this technical committee, they ask technical opinions of people. The electric company knows that our electrical service runs to here, and here are my, this is what my capacity is. The sewer department knows this sewer line stops here. They know how that affects. All we know is, and maybe this is what we need. We need to pass a resolution and send this, that for every home that gets built, there's the possibility that we're getting closer to having to build another school. We don't have any idea how many kids are moving in. We don't know what zone they'll be in. We don't know any of that. I mean, these other entities can tell you exactly how it affects them. They know exactly where their facilities are. We don't know how many kindergartners we have coming to school in August. We don't know how many 12th graders we have coming to school in August. We don't know any of that. So, and I agree. It's not our. I signed up to do a lot of things in this position, but I didn't sign up to tell somebody what they can do with their property. There's other people that signed on for that. I just don't think. I mean, it's common sense. When we build homes, when the opportunity is presented for more people to move here, we're probably going to have more schools. Surely, that we get emails asking why we don't have a response to that. Surely people can figure that out. With more people, it's going to require more schools, and we're not sitting around with a bunch of empty seats.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you for that, and I'm sure we'll revisit it maybe a time or two before September. Number 3, Operation Low Bids.
The first thing we have there, Tommy's going to speak to, it's Khajiit Services, and he can explain that to you.
This is the company it's a multiple cellular data company that the Emergency Connectivity Fund by the federal government. This will allow us, which we do not have the equipment yet, everything's on back order, as everybody knows. This will allow us over the summer to get on the buses and install. Selected buses will have Wi-Fi to help with homework. That's this agreement. It's going to be reimbursed by the federal government.
Thank you very much. Consent. Next item.
The next bid number 22054 is fire extinguisher and kitchen hood inspections. We did bid this through the county. We had 2 that responded. We felt that the best bid and the most comprehensive bid was State Systems. That is also who we currently use. And our recommendation would be just to remain with them. This is a 5-year that we can exit at any point, but this pricing is good for 5 years.
Okay, thank you. Any consent? Next, we're moving on to policy. Your time to shine.
The first policy up is the summer school policy, which the instruction department had worked on, so if there's any questions.
Any questions regarding?
Essentially, it adds the requirements for us to do the summer learning camps for the next 2 years.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just so I understand, it's just shifting it from what we currently have is just saying you guys have got to bring us something, we've got to approve it, to saying that this is what you're going to bring us, and you're going to bring it at this time, but we're not going to have to approve it each time, is what you're saying. That's
okay. Thank you. Any discussion further on this? Can we move the policies to consent? I know. I'm just asking about this one. I'm just doing one at a time. All right. Thank you. Number 2, vacation policy.
So this policy has been on here a few times. Since the last board meeting, myself, Eric, Lisa, Doug, and Scott all went over this policy, as well as Mr. Lindsay. And it was, at one point it was thought to just bring what was necessary, but at the direction of Ms. Ventura, we all agreed as a team that this was the policy that we were bringing forward. You can see I did update the memorandum, so it tells you what was changed to the original policy. This does have a few different changes from what you guys had seen before. It does change it puts your 12-month staff on a policy where they can earn more vacation as they are employed longer with Maury County Public Schools. It puts the 11-month staff to where they would earn a total of 10 vacation days for the school year, and which would include our assistant principals. Assistant principals don't currently earn vacation. They have that built into their calendar to where they're off on the breaks, and this would, calendars is a different discussion, but this would then put them back to earning a total of 10 vacation days throughout the school year. It does set a maximum accrual vacation for all employees to 40 days, and then anything over that 40 at the end of the year would roll into their sick leave bank. It would allow for this first year to, that cap wouldn't be placed until July of 2023.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsay.
I'll take blame for this one too. This is on here at my request. And I'll tell you the reasons why I asked to explore this. Under our current policy, I can be a 12-month administrator, and I will accrue vacation time at a different rate than Chad, who is a 12-month employee who works alongside me that's not classified as an administrator. Chad would be, as an hourly 12-month employee, he's only going to get 10 days of vacation a year. If I stick around long enough, I can get 24 vacation days a year. There was total inequity between different classes, I don't know if that's the right word, of employees. Secondly, our current policy allows that if I'm an administrator in another district, I bring that seniority with me to accrue those vacation days. So if I've been a 20-year administrator in another district, I show up here and I'm getting 5 weeks vacation. There's no other industry I know of that does that. Vacation is given as a reward for longevity with your employer. So as I dove into this, and I think Ms. Ventura will agree with this, when you start uncovering these layers, this gets way more difficult than you would ever think. But out of the goodness of her heart, I did go and sit down with her, those people that Mr. R talked about. What we come to a consensus with this, but it basically does satisfy the issues I had. We're going to treat all 12-month employees the same. We're going to treat 11-month employees the same, and it just puts more equity into that policy than what we have currently.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion on this policy? Ms. Parker.
Can I ask about the holidays that we added? Can you explain the?
It was just one,
reasoning?
President's Day.
We didn't add New Year's Eve.
It had been on the calendar. Those days were already off. Like for the 11 and 12 month, the way current policy is written, the 11 and 12 month got 11 or 12 holidays, and so those were like, I looked at the board approved calendar, and like when central office was closed, that was already on there.
So I guess this is the issue that I've got on this. Like what we approve on the calendar, we're approving extra. I mean, we close for a period of time for fall break. We close central office for a period of time for fall break, but we're still giving a full day. I mean, you can still add on, even though we're adding in days that we are paying for, correct? As far as holidays go.
Well, there's actually no time at fall break that central office is closed. There's 2 days at spring break, but no time off at fall break.
Thanksgiving.
There is 3 days at Thanksgiving.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, this is Thanksgiving and Friday. So, again, it just comes back to, at the end of the day, there's a cost associated to what you're proposing that I'm not clear on.
Right. The current policy itself, that only lists those 6 days. However, underneath it, it says 11 months has the 11 holidays and 12 has the 12 holidays. And so it does add up. So there's the President's Day, what that was added. And maybe there was one additional day that had been added in there. But those were the days that had been already on the calendar that people have already been getting off and getting paid. So there isn't a difference as to what's been happening
Well, I'm just gonna.
for the 11 and 12 months.
I'm just thinking about outside of school world, you know, people don't always they get New Year's Day off. They don't get New Year's Eve off. People may get Thanksgiving, but they don't necessarily get Thanksgiving the Friday after Thanksgiving. And what I'm saying is, if we're adding,
It's pretty comparable to what other districts do.
Okay.
And I did look at other districts when I looked at vacation policy and holidays. So this is very comparable to what other districts in our, especially the ones that were included in our salary study. I went to those districts and I looked at what holidays that they have. This is very comparable. Some actually give more holidays than what this is proposing.
Okay.
And the only one that it would have a financial impact would be the food service department, because it did add some, and I did talk with Mr. Brian Parkhurst about that prior.
Well, I'll just go back to, I mean, Ms. Ventura, I've talked to you before, and you've said that federal programs, special ed, y'all have stuff that y'all got to get in at the end of the year. December 31st. Do you need to be off on December 31st?
This policy aligns with what we've always this actually aligns our handbook with our vacation policy. The policy has always been erroneous for what we've been, other than President's Day, that is the only addition. We are not taking off the week in between Christmas and New Year's.
Okay.
These are the days that we have always had off. We've always had off New Year's Eve, New Year's Day.
So
Christmas Eve,
the
Christmas.
administrator's handbook, and that was something that was approved by the board.
The administrator's handbook said that. Your policy did not. Now
Correct.
your policy aligns with what we've always done.
Okay. But what I'm saying is that our policy we can change.
Correct.
Right? So, like, we're not locked into doing
No,
what's
you
in
can-
the handbook if
you
we
can-
want to revise the handbook. So, I mean, I'm just saying, if we're adding more days in that we're giving people off potentially, then I feel like saying you need to decide if you want to take New Year's Eve off, as opposed to us just saying you get New Year's Eve off. That's a difference that people like have. That's a judgment call that people have to make.
Absolutely.
And I would be more comfortable with people making that judgment call, rather, with that being not an expectation, but a choice.
So, two things on this, and I guess I don't know if Ms. Parker agrees with this or not, but one of the issues I have with that is it feels like creep. You know, at some point somebody changed the administrative handbook, and now we're just fixing it because because the answer there is somebody wasn't following policy. And I think that's where I start to have some problems here, because we've always talked about, you know, that's where I get very uncomfortable that we're moving that direction. And the other part too, and I said this when we went through the salary study, because I get very, very uncomfortable when we start shifting, and I don't know if you guys realize you're doing it, when you talk about what other districts are doing versus what other industries are doing, because they're two separate things. And I think we just have to be very mindful. We can't just hop back and forth between those two comparisons, because they're not the same comparison, and there's different standards there. And I think that was kind of part of what Ms. Parker was alluding to, because in the business world, a lot of these are not days we get. They're not even remotely days we get. For example, my employees, there's an option to take off the Friday after Thanksgiving. It's an option. If you want to take a personal day, you can, and we make adjustments for it on the business side. And I think that's what most businesses operate in, some model similar to that, or you just have to work it. But again, that's what makes me uncomfortable. Those two things, I'm still not sure where. I appreciate, Mr. Lindsay, the idea that we're moving towards a more unified direction of how they flow. I do appreciate that, but I still struggle with some parts of this. But those are the points I had to make on it.
If I may, the current policy does say that you're earning 11 or 12 days of holiday. So this just actually lines it out as to what it is. It lines up to what's been in the district. I would say there are industries that have less holidays. I came from one. I worked in the funeral home world. We had 4 days off. That's what it was. But I also know there are a lot of industries that have more time off than that. We had a local casket company that closed for a whole week in July. They just closed. My mom works for a television network. They are closed from Christmas until New Year's Day. Like, there are other industries that are closed for those. These are policies that are for your employees. So, and I think if we list them out, it's more clear to an employee what days I get off, and as well as for payroll, they know what days do I need to make sure that their time card says this is a holiday, rather than policy just saying, oh, it's a total of 12 days, we're going to list 6, you guys make up whatever other days that there are. So I think it actually is more clear for our employees and for you and for payroll as to what holidays our employees get paid for. And additionally, we did, currently, your board policy says that your part-time employees get paid these holidays. The new policy would be just full-time staff would get paid for the holidays.
Can you let Mr. Howe go on? Yes, Mr. Howe.
So, and you just kind of made the point I was going to make, that, you know, I have worked in the business world. I've worked in the banking world, where, I mean, is completely different than the business world, where we had lots of holidays off because the feds were closed and you get those days off. If you look at locally, General Motors shuts down for 3 weeks in December, I believe, when they retool and stuff. That's their industry standard. Yes, we have to ride the line between the industry we're in, which is education, and the other industries, because we're looking at, say, the salary study, we're definitely competing with other industries. And, you know, we will be flip-flopping from back and forth between the education and other industries, because that's just what we have to do if we want to keep and retain employees. I think this pretty much spells it out, what you're going to get. If 14 other districts that we were compared to do this, why would we be the one that stands out and says, nope, we're not going to do it. Nope, we're gonna make you choose. We're gonna do something different. I thought the purpose of our salary study was to see where we are and to see what we're going to offer. And why would you not offer something that 14 other competitors are offering? That just seems extremely counterproductive to say, we're going to give you this big rate, we're going to give you a great raise, but, you know, we're going to take this back. That does not sit well with me. It does not sit well with me at all. We should be aligning ourselves with that and trying to move forward with our pay.
We need to be careful, because we're going to point some fingers at ourselves. Because if you pull up our calendar, we unanimously approved a calendar that already gives these days off. If you look, if you look at our 22-23 calendar in November, central office is closed the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of November. We're already closed Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then you look in January, central office, we approved a calendar that says central office is closed December 30th, and then it's closed January the 2nd. We already approved that. We as a board approved that. All we're doing is aligning the policy with what we've always approved as our calendar, except maybe President's Day. That may be the only day we added. But besides that, we're already giving all these other days off. We're just putting it in policy and saying that we are. Our policy has been contradictory to what we've actually been doing. We're just trying to align everything.
Sorry, I just want to say there is a cost associated with it, whether you like it or not. And I understand what we've done. But, I mean, when we've had discussions about snow days, I've asked Mr. Lukonen before, how much does it cost us? And I think the number that I've gotten before was about $25,000. So, I mean, for everything that we do, there is a cost associated with it. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do these days necessarily, but what I'm saying is we're also turning around and then trying to give extra days. It looks like to me how we're reworking it on, you know, we rounded stuff up, didn't we? Didn't we go from like 1.25 to 1.5 and things like that? So we're adding time to our people, to our employees' vacation as well under this policy. So, I mean, I feel like it's a give and take on some of that. I just want the work to get done. Like, that's my only thing. So if people can be off for 3 days of Thanksgiving, that's great. But if we come back on December 1st and kids don't have lesson plans and buses aren't running and things like, I mean, like, that's when I mean, we can talk about what industry standard is, but what do we need for our industry? What do we need to make sure that our schools run properly and that we get the work done?
And believe me, no one feels that more than I do right now here today. But I will say this. The reason why I'm saying that there is no cost, there is a cost in the way vacation days are accrued. You are 100% correct in that. There is no cost in adding these vacation days because our salaries are determined on the number of days worked. So every single employee, by the end of this month, is going to have a calendar where they will work. Teachers are 220, 240, 260. That's 10, 11, 12. Oh, I'm sorry. 200, 220, 240. Thank you. Yeah, come on. And then we have 11-month admin that are 238, and we have 12-month admin that are 260. If we work President's Day, we're working 261 days. That will cost you money because our salaries are now determined by hour, by day. Our calendars align with that. And now we're being sure that everybody's calendar aligns with that.
I just have to say I have no problem with it. I mean, the way I look at it, we're dealing with professionals. If there's deadlines to be met, from my experience, usually people are jumping in there and getting it done. We've got a lot of our central office people, 11-month employees here tonight at, what time is it, 9 o'clock at night. So I trust that they'll get the work done. That's just me.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to go over this with you. I did put a folder on your desk in front of you there, and this is kind of a package for you. I really couldn't think of a better way to present this because all of these policies relate to one another in some form or fashion. The very first item that you see in the folder is just kind of a infomercial, for lack of a better word. This is what we were referring to when we talked about the kiosk for ESSER. I know when we started reaching out for vendors for quotes, some of the things that came back to us looked like spaceships and were quite expensive, but this is what we're talking about there. So that's just more FYI. Now going to the policies themselves. In the folders, they're in the order that they're listed in the board memos. And the first one is the trauma-informed code of behavior and discipline. It's proposed that, and all of these policies have been reviewed by TSBA, so we did fly it by all of them first. But the proposal is basically to scrap the trauma-informed code of behavior and discipline as it currently states and change the name to student code of conduct. One of the reasons for that is that's what this policy is intended for, students. And also this policy is supposed to be posted throughout the school, and when you see when a teenager or a middle school student sees trauma-informed code of behavior and discipline, they don't have a clue what that is. But when you title it Student Code of Conduct, it's more personal, and the message is this is for them. Also, the intent of this policy is to allow building level administrators to have greater say in discipline decisions and outcomes as it currently stands, and we feel that this is in a move in the right direction. Not to mention we did streamline it more, especially since students will have access to this, as well as parents, of course. But we narrowed it down from 17 pages to 7. And even TSBA suggested prior to this that what we had before in place did not need to be that lengthy. So that's what we did there. Are there any questions for this particular policy? Okay, moving right on. The next policy, 6.316, suspension, expulsion, remand. That policy does not currently exist. We felt it necessary that we put this in place to better define this for parents, guardians, and students, as well as teachers and administrators, what this should look like. So we did reach out to other school districts to see what they had in place, and this is modeled after a lot of those school districts. And also, just for the record, this was an inclusive procedure in developing these discipline policies. We established a discipline steering committee throughout the year. We had participation from board members, administrators, teachers on this panel, and had great discussion. Also, as part of the MOU Negotiated Contract Committee, there was discussion there. And then even through DHA hearings, I would routinely ask administrators what they thought needed to be changed and things of that nature. So that's what led us to where we're at now. Any discussion or questions for policy 6.316? Yes, sir.
So I just want to clarify here. So I'm an administrator at a school. Austin here, I'm going to pick on him because I know him, and this is not his character, but I'm going to put him in this situation. He's a repeat offender. He's just not getting with my program here. He's been to me numerous times. He's a disruptive in class, and the teachers keep sending him to me. It has reached the level of which in-school suspension is not working. We've done this twice, 3 times maybe, and it's not working. So at this point, it's reached the level at which I'm sending him to alternative school here at HOP. This new procedure, he reports immediately here to alternative school the next day. And then what? He stays here, right?
How it's set up right now, and ideally, if a principal wanted to remand a student to the alternative learning program, there would be a procedure for that. The alternative learning program does have to prepare for that student. There has to be a transition plan put in place, textbooks, devices, things of that nature. So ideally, that student can be placed in ISAS or suspended out of school for 1 to 2 days to allow that transition plan to take effect, and then that student and parent or guardian would be given a report date after there's collaboration with the principal here at the alternative learning program. Now, how we have it designed is a principal, a school building administrator, can remand for repeat offenses. We're not talking zero tolerance, but for repeat offenses for up to 45 days. And I've worked into some of the policies here. 45 days is 45 attended days. If it takes them 90 days to get 45 days, that's what it's going to take. While they're here, part of it is part of that restorative practices, things of that nature. We want them back in their school.
Right.
But they've got to work on some things, some goals, things like that, that would be part of their behavior plan to where they could transition back to their home school. So that's how it's going to be designed.
Okay. That pretty much answers my question. And then the only other part of that process would be if the parents decided to appeal that, then there would be a DHA hearing at that point.
Yes, sir. That is correct. A parent or guardian can appeal any decision such as that based at the school level. And I have policy here for DHA. DHA will only be used for appeals.
But that's not how it's working currently. Currently, if I remand my student, Austin here, to HOP, it's an automatic appeals process. It would go to a DHA hearing, and then that could possibly be...
Correct. That could possibly lead to a change of placement, but it would be assigned by DHA. We all know principals have been expressing concern about being out of their building. I've put things in procedurally in place for next year to prevent a lot of that from occurring, such as being on a DHA panel. The only time they would have to appear or they wouldn't even be on the DHA panel anymore. We're going to have pupil services represented on the panel itself. The administrator will only be here if whatever case wherever they were met at someone, they wanted to appeal the parent or guardian.
Well, so that's what I'm getting at here. So as an administrator, if I send him over here, currently right now, I know right off the bat that I'm going to have to spend some time preparing my case before I come here, because you're not just going to show up and be like, okay, I've got to have my documentation. I've got to know, present this. I'm assuming it's like a court. I'm very familiar with court. So I'm going to spend time doing that. I'm going to have to make time to come here to the DHA hearing. So what I'm hearing is it kind of eliminates a lot of unnecessary processes. Our administrators are in the buildings taking care of things that they need to take care of in the buildings more, and that's the main thing. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And just for the record, say a student refuses or a parent refuses to send their child, they're going to be counted absent. Then it becomes a truancy issue, which is part of my department as well.
Real quick, I don't know if this needs to be a part of policy or maybe it's part of procedure, but I have heard complaints about, it may just be one or two. You hear the squeaky wheel, but I've heard of complaints from both administrator and teachers that sometimes kids coming back into the regular environment after they've been at alternative school, that maybe that's not communicated timely enough. Do we have any kind of procedure or policy that would let that communication happen, like at least X amount of days ahead of time?
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's part of that transition plan that's not currently in place. It will be a plan.
Okay.
There has to be communication as part of that transition plan.
I personally, my opinion only, I would like for you to think on this, is that there should be at least a 3-day heads up. I've heard of instances where it's been communicated on a Friday, perhaps principal was doing other administrative tasks, and then that come back on Monday, the kid's there, surprise. They need to have some kind of transition.
Agreed.
Okay.
And Mr. Ritchie, can you, in the past and correct me if I'm wrong on this, in the past we have remanded students and said, based on number of points received. Our new policies are very clear with days. So when you get remanded here, you know exactly when you're going back, and that should help with that communication.
Correct. We are doing away with the point system. There were some indiscrepancies, how that was administered and that sort of thing. We want to base it on attendance, so that's why we're doing that. And goal setting.
Thank you. Mr.
Yes,
Moore.
sir.
Yeah, I'm going to actually go back to 6.300. I think that's the first one. You said there was, I think you should be able to answer this one. There was a little more autonomy at the administrator level to be able to make some judgment calls. I love that, by the way. But I know one of the things I hear is that, I guess, what would be the checks and balances to make sure the administrators are not being a little too lenient? Because I think that's some of the concerns I would have heard.
Too lenient in terms of not remanding students for
correct. Maybe
when
they should have. Again, what are there some checks and balances there to a process to kind of follow up and make sure that we're consistent there?
Yes, sir. And understand this is kind of a radical change. A lot of these policies have not even been addressed for 5 years or more. We know a lot's changed since then, both in the outside world and here in the district. So there's going to have to be some education there. There'll have to be some checks and balances, obviously. And part of that checks and balances is through the appeal process as well. So, but yes, there'll be a close eye at least starting out to see how this thing pans out. Yes, sir.
Ms. Irvin.
And I'm sorry, because I don't really know which policy this ties into, but I have a question. I have had overwhelming, as I know most everybody here has, overwhelming feedback about the vaping problem we have with our students. So I've reviewed, I think, all of this. This is more about what we can do. It looks like ultimately it's suspensions, but suspensions, I have a twofold. some kids like suspensions because that means they don't have to come to school, and that also contributes to our general deficit of whatever society as a whole. But here's my question: is there anything we can do or work with, like like Marshall County? Like, I don't know, can we hit kids where it hurts, like with driver's license or something that's really going to sting a little bit?
Well, understand this: what was communicated from Marshall County was kind of a proposal. That was not state approved.
Okay.
That's a state thing, and that was communicated prematurely. That's something that can't be done.
Okay.
However, since you brought it up, we all know vaping's an issue, especially vaping with THC. Huge issue. We've also been told through our legal updates through TSBA that THC would, starting next year, would no longer be considered zero tolerance. We were told that THC would be viewed like tobacco and alcohol. With that being said, if that's the case, I revamped the policy and moved what's currently where tobacco is, which is level 300. I bumped if it's going to be lumped together, I'm going to bump it to a 400 offense. So suspended days can be longer. Repeat offenses can lead to a change of placement to the alternative learning program. Would not be considered a zero tolerance offense, but that doesn't mean that a change of placement wouldn't be implemented. We're also working on a drug awareness program here at the alternative learning program that would be part of that restorative practices.
Thank you very much. I know the Murray County Prevention Coalition is very interested in talking to you about that.
Yes, sir.
Next policy.
Policy 6.319, the alternative learning program. A lot of it's procedural and things of that nature. Any questions on that?
Any questions? Seeing none, we're good.
Very well. And then policy 6.317, what we want it to do there is basically clarify the role of DHA, which is appeal purposes only. Any questions on that?
Mr. Lindsay.
If I understand that right, the only way we're going to have a DHA hearing is if my kid has been expelled for more than 10 days. If he'd been sent to alternative, let's say principal sends my kid to alternative school for 5 days, I'm dealing with that. The only way I go to DHA is if he's been sent here for more than 10 days.
Truthfully, a parent or guardian can appeal any discipline decision, even if it's a 1-day suspension. Typically, that would only happen if it's a change of placement, because that's what impacts that parent or guardian the most. But there does have to be provision for that. But I'll be honest with you, the only time we've dealt with appeals, and we still do deal with appeals currently, where they may appeal a ZT decision or something like that, that's when it comes to DHA as it currently stands. So to answer your question, one could pop up. It doesn't have to be based on a remand only. It could be a 3-day suspension. A parent, I don't agree with that, I want to appeal it. But that doesn't happen very often.
But my question is, it says DHA shall conduct appeals for students who have been suspended or expelled for more than 10 days.
Yes, sir. In that regard, yes.
Right. So my kid's being a jerk, he gets sent home for 3 days. We're not going to have a DHA hearing over that.
No. Now, they'll call my office. We could have an informal hearing or something like that.
No.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions on this one? I don't see any. We're ready to move on.
Very well. And then policy 6.302, deals with procedural due process. We just basically struck out lines 10, 11, and 12 that allowed for the DHA hearing. Well, we're no longer doing that because it's just for appeals.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Any question on this? Seeing none, are we good to move all of these to consent, or do we need to do something different with them?
Well, real quick, there was one on the cell phone device.
Okay.
The bulk of it is, the gist of it is, school can ban that cell phone for a period of time. Just for the record, DHA this year has banned 30 cell phones. I count it today. Those are typically worked through a behavior plan, and those cell phone bans have carried over through next year when they go back to school. So That can be done. The state approved that. Now, also understand schools like EA Cox, they do have procedures with their cell phones, and it seems to be working quite well. 5th, 6th, and 7th graders, they have to put their cell phone in their locker at the beginning of the day before first period. They cannot get that cell phone till at the end of the day. Their 8th graders, they have to put their cell phones in their locker after first period, and then they can get those at the end of the day. Works well. So that's a procedure thing. But as far as cell phone bans, that's individualized, and it does work. And I'll be honest with you, we've had parents at DHA say, thank you. So, but anywho, just wanted to let you know that.
Comments, Ms. Irvin?
Just real quick, that is individualized, not mass. So a
That is
principal
correct.
can't get upset and be like, all of, 10th grade, no cell phones. It
Correct.
would be per, okay.
Correct.
Just making sure.
Thank you. Mr. Lindsay?
Just a comment, I've received feedback from teachers that would say, we gotta do something about the cell phone policy, we got too many cell phones. Well, when I look at our policy, even currently, principals had authority to take care of them as they wanted to.
They did. And part of that's that educational process. Principals need to know that they can handle that stuff accordingly. But also understand this. You can have the best policy on the face of the earth pertaining to cell phones. A lot of it still boils down to classroom management. You've got teacher A here with no cell phone issues in their classroom, and over here, teacher B, students can do whatever they want on their cell phones. Now, granted, some of that's because the sub's in there, and they don't know any better. But still, there's inconsistency there. A lot of that's education. We've got to educate our teachers and our administrators on how to implement this.
Well, I get that, but I'm going to pin this on administrators. If I'm an administrator at a school and cell phones have been a problem, I have a tool with this policy to say, just like you said, put the thing in the locker when you get to school and you take it out when you leave.
That is correct.
So the feedback I've been getting is unwarranted toward us. After I go and look at it, we had a mechanism in place for them to take care of it, but there's just been some administrators not taking care of their business. Just to be frank, that they could have taken care of a problem. We gave them the latitude to take care of the problem, and we still give it to them.
Our teachers have the authority to say they're in your backpack, don't get them out, don't they?
They do.
I mean, they do.
And like I said, many teachers have no issues with cell phones.
Okay, thank you. Are we good to put all of these on consent? Do we need to pull any out to discuss? All right. Nothing else at the board meeting. If you find one you want to pull out, we can do that then. Student Advisory Council's been pulled. Other business, ESS contract renewal. Who has that one?
That's me.
Okay.
So we started with ESS back in the fall. The contract that we have approved, it goes through June 30th, but it is with an automatic renewal unless you all want to stop it. So that we wouldn't actually have to re-sign any contract. I checked with them, and that's the way our contract was written, so it was already approved by our office, our financial office as well. So if you guys want to stop that, that's something you can tell me. We have to give them 30 days notice. I would suggest that we do continue with it. Our subs went through a whole lot to get on board with them. We haven't been there a year. We are starting to see over 50% rates daily, which is more than what we were doing last year, and I think that's more, we haven't seen as many people out due to COVID. We still see a lot of people out. There's been a lot of other weird sicknesses and viruses going around. But I think it's, everyone's kind of learning the system. The only thing, and you guys can do this at any time, and I know it's a budgetary one, so you probably wouldn't do it any time right now. If you all ever want to increase the pay rate for the subs, that is something that can be done. That would be, you need your vote, and we can amend the contract at that point.
Okay. So this is just the contract as is to continue.
Correct.
All right, Mr. Howe.
So I've received a lot of good feedback. I mean, this is, obviously, budgetary-wise, it doesn't really impact that much when we don't pay the company unless they supply a sub. So I'm hearing a lot of good things. I think this has definitely been very beneficial for us, and I hope that it continues to see the fuel rate rise.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion? We'll put this on consent if not. Okay. Other business. Next is proposed new MOU.
Good evening, Board, and Chair Fulbright, thank you for allowing MCA to speak this evening. I'm Jennifer Inc., and I will be president again of MCA. So, my first foray back into the business of it here. So, what I really wanted to do was talk a little bit about the survey that I gave to y'all last time, and just to review some of the information from that, because that is kind of the driving force of why we did some of the things in the MOU. So I wanted to review the results of a survey MCA did in preparation for collaborative conferencing and how it informed some of the changes in the MOU. MCA was selected by the teachers in Murray County Public Schools as the group to represent the teachers in the 3-year collaborative conferencing process. With the assistance of TEA, Central Office, and Jack Cobb, a survey was developed to seek out data and input from all certified teachers in the district. Out of just over 800 teachers, 453 teachers responded to that survey. Since I've been following board meetings, that is probably one of the best response rates from any survey in Murray County schools. And it was an anonymous survey, and that was not just TEA MCA members. That was out of every teacher received that survey. Just to clarify, this included both members and non-members of MCA. In discussions, we also referred to the salary study as some of the data as well. So what did we know going into collaborative conferencing already? We knew that Murray County was challenged with finding and retaining qualified classroom teachers. Several classrooms have gone without teachers for a year, and having had remote teachers with classroom coordinators using the Elevate program. We also had challenges filling support staff positions. Now, well, in collaborative conferencing, we only address issues with the teachers. A lot of times what we do with the teachers, we kind of support with support staff. When you look at the fact noted in the salary study that 1/3 of our teachers are edging towards the retirement age, topping out at the salary level, 20 years and plus, and only 19% of our teachers are between years 5 and 15, and a number of people leaving colleges and leaving college with degrees in education, it puts MCPS students in a precarious situation for their future. So what did the survey tell us about the state of teachers in Murray County? 82% felt like the top subject that needed to be addressed was salary, and thanks to the board and the work of central office administration, teachers are excited about the changes in the salary schedule. Coming in second was definitely working conditions. 35% of our teachers work second jobs outside of their teaching positions. Our income has definitely not kept up with cost of living, especially in housing in Murray County, where just the other day the Tennessean reported that the median home price is now $330,000 in Murray County. 94% of teachers do not feel like their teaching income alone allowed them to live comfortably in Murray County. And of those who took the survey, 61% have master's degrees or higher. I think that's telling that I've got a master's degree in EDS, a PhD, but that income does not help me support me living in Murray County. Teachers felt like staffing issues were mostly caused by salaries, both overall and entry level, and working conditions. Most choices in the area beyond this in the salary study were similar in scores. All of the above reasons are why we added the line for the board to make a reasonable effort to offer a cost of living increase. We also wanted to recognize the significance of the raise the district gave by having it memorialized in the MOU as an addendum. Why is it important to get these positions filled? 79.65% of the teachers had to work extra or assume duties due to vacant or unfilled positions. We addressed this by clear language in the MOU as to the compensation for teacher sub-teacher pay. As it was brought up by an administrator on the team, it is hard to ask a teacher to work for $10 an hour. To aid in the recruitment of new teachers, 4 months paid maternity leave was added as a unique benefit to working in Murray. 4 weeks. 4 weeks. Yeah, not 4 months. No, sorry, 4 weeks. Paid maternity leave was added. I don't know where I got 4 months from. Wishful thinking. Not for me because I'm not having any more, but paid maternity leave was added as a unique benefit to working in Marion County, and that was a proposal made by Ms. Gerard. 57% of teachers are loyal employees with no desire to leave Murray County. The question is, of those employees, are those the ones ready to retire? Or the ones in the first 5 years? 42% were leaving Murray County. The reasons cited: lack of communication, pay, lack of respect from the community, lack of support, micromanagement, over-testing, and too much stress. 45% said they were considering leaving education altogether due to mental health, finances, extra hours required, lack of appreciation, stress, and demands placed on them. These responses caused us to think outside the box at what we can offer teachers. What wouldn't be excruciatingly painful financially, but relieve some of the stress, mental health, and overall well-being. This is where we added a local leave time to the MOU. 78 athletic coaches responded. Big notes on personal vehicle use as they use to travel to games, how stipends should be handled, and having the availability for buses for sports, which is something that Mr. Pointer discussed today. 115 specialty or related arts teachers responded to the survey. 54% are polled to support in such roles as cafeteria or RTI, and 43% are tasked with unrelated duties that make it difficult to cover their own standards. We made planning time specific to state law for all areas. 62% have to expend their own funds or depend on grants or volunteers to provide what is needed for their curriculum. We added additional language to make sure that these areas, fine arts and support and specialty courses, were included in the budget annually and not just as an afterthought. 77% of the teachers did not feel like their uninterrupted daily planning periods were being protected, largely due to PLC or other district-required meetings, data meetings, or covering other classes. Specific language guaranteeing the 150-minute duty-free individual planning time protection was added to help in this area. And that 150-minute duty-free is state law. Inequitable distribution of duties is also an issue, ranging from 0 to 6 weeks to 19 or more weeks per year. This is a wide range of a number of events. There is also a wide range of a number of events teachers are required to attend, from 0 to more than 7. And one of the things we discussed about that, and I think we just talked about in collaborative conferencing, that was going to be addressed with principals, is how, if you're having teachers that have 19 or more weeks per year, and these other teachers principals are only having 0 to 6 weeks, how can you look at those plans and come up with a way to make it a little more equitable? 93% of teachers felt like if you sponsor a school club outside of your hours, you should be compensated for it. Many school systems do this, especially at the high school level. Overall, the issues that are of concern to teachers are the emotional exhaustion at 82%, general feeling that they are not valued at 65%, and physical effects of teaching at 55%. These issues are what drove much of the discussion in conferencing. It was a positive experience and probably one of the most congenial and honest exchanges I've had in either conferencing or back in the day when we did contract negotiations. You have the opportunity to do some great things to support teachers by passing the MOU. You have the opportunity to show them that you hear their cries. We hope that you'll support the MOU. If you have any, and Ms. Gerard did the red line of the MOU, so we can go through and just, I think I covered most of the changes. We did add addendums. One of the other issues was grievances. Before, the teachers would have to go through, to the director of schools or somebody at central office to get the grievance paperwork to file either a grievance or a complaint. We've attached the grievance paperwork to the MOU and also the procedure for that. And then there were the salary was in the addendum, and what was the other addendum? Policy was behavior, I believe. There were links, and the policies have links to them so that they're easily found by teachers. We did the reasonable effort. Other than that, most of the things have remained the same. So just the local leave, that would be we called it local leave because it's being offered by Murray County Schools. We didn't want to call it a personal day because that's something the state provides. And so, from year 8 to 15, you can earn 1 additional local leave day. Years 16 to 20, 2 additional local leave days. Years 21 to 25, 3 additional local leave days. And years 26 plus 4 additional local leave days. The reason we did that is because we're trying to find a way to keep teachers here and want to stay longer, instead of being ready to stay 5 years and go to another system. The other red line things were, I think I covered most of them in. Other things were just changed, were like instead of personnel department, human resource department. I think I covered everything else.
Okay, thank you very much
Yeah.
for sharing that. Is our next move to bump this to the full board meeting and then vote on it there? Okay, we'll do that then. Thank you.
Chair
Sharon.
Fulbright, could I say something real quick?
Yes.
And Jen is fast, and man, she was hitting every main idea. As we went through the collaborative process, I just want to remind everyone, we're here saying, please vote yes on the MOU. 4 of you worked hard on it. 8 teachers worked on it. 4 admin. I mean, really, there was a core group. We analyzed every detail down to bring Doug Lukonen in and look at dollars. What was the cost? Because I know, Ms. Parker, that's the bottom line. How much more, can we afford it? And remember, as a group of 16, if one person said no, it was tossed out. We had to have a unanimous vote on this. So these details have been analyzed by 16 people for months. So we're really at the point of the product has been produced. The evidence is there that would really show it could, should, would be supported. So we're just asking for the yes vote
Okay.
in June.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore.
If I could just go along with that, and I just appreciate, Ms. Inc. went over this, that she felt like, and I think several people said they felt like this was the most collaborative of conferencing that they've been in experience with. I know this was the 3rd one I've sat in on, and I would have to agree with that. It was a very enlightening experience, and I would hope at some point every board member gets a chance to sit in on this. Regardless of where you stand on it, it was for me a fascinating way to hear in an open forum where people felt safe to share some sensitive things that are difficult to talk about maybe if you just catch somebody on the street or in an open meeting. So that was, I always have enjoyed that part and really taken that part serious myself, because I get to hear teachers share the things they struggle with, things that really make their lives difficult, and things that maybe the MOU may be able to help with. So I want to say I appreciate the work that was put in by you guys, and as well as administrative staff and the other board members that were there as well.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lindsay.
Mr. Wilbur can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the collaborative conferencing law passed in 2012, maybe. I was fortunate enough to sit on the inaugural collaborative conferencing committee, and I think it may be good for our board, Mr. Wilbur, you could send out maybe some highlights of responsibilities that the board has, or maybe just some highlights of that collaborative conferencing law, as far as what our requirements are, what our requirements aren't, as we move forward with this. If I have to vote on the MOU as a whole, I can't vote for every aspect of it as we move forward. And but I think maybe a little bit of education for the board. I know when the collaborative conferencing law went into effect, there was actually TSBA put out some education resources, maybe even, I think we all had to attend a day-long training on it. And I don't know that maybe that's something they need to do more often. I don't think anybody, I don't think they do that now, but it may be helpful if we could just get some highlights and points on about that law and what's required and what's not.
Thank you very much. All right, seeing no other lights, our last thing on the agenda is a attorney-client meeting. Following that, we will come in, adjourn this meeting, and then start our special called meeting, which the agenda is also in the back. So we'll stand in recess.
are you people? Ms. Parker, Mr. Moore, Ms. Irvin, Mr. Sims, Mr. Fulbright, Mr. Hooper, Mr. Howell, and the guy on the end down there. That's right.
We have enough for a quorum. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Motion for Mr. Moore, seconded by Mr. Hooper. All right, that motion passes. Moving on to item number 4, ESSER funding.
Okay, as discussed earlier, the budget amendments you have before you have $780,000 in playground equipment, $325,000 in Edgenuity, $500,000 in iReady, $168,000 in CASE, $700,000 in Catapult, which would be in other contracted services, $300,000 for the Dean of Students positions, that would be 3 of those, $125,000 in PD, that would be for the 4 schools we discussed, and $60,000 in the additional consumable supplies for PD, and the rest is in devices, which turned out to be $1,388,591. Is
there any discussion?
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion from Mr. Moore, seconded by Ms. Kinzer. Any further discussion? This is the, let me take a look at this. Are we doing both ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 together?
Yes, the funds overlap.
Okay. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I believe we're ready to vote. All right, that passes. Item 4.2, bid on laptops and Chromebooks.
This is so we can get 5th grade devices, freshman devices, and a third of the teachers so that we can have them day one school, everything ready.
Have a motion from Mr. Moore, seconded by Mr. Howell. Any discussion on this part of it? Is this reflecting the change in the number we just made?
No, we had discussed that earlier. This gets them started, and then I will give Chris the total amount, and we'll get that to you next
That sounds perfect.
work session.
All right. I don't see any other lights for discussion. I believe we're ready to vote. Boy, that's a long description. Yeah, could you read the motion to us? All right. That motion passes. All right. We have passed and we're good with that. Item number 5, appointment of superintendent. Jake, what do we, I guess we have all received a copy of the proposed contract? Go
That's
ahead.
right, and that's what you're voting on is the contract attached to your agenda, or that's what you have before you, the contract attached to your agenda.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion to approve from Ms. Kinzer, second by Mr. Howell. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we look like we're ready to vote. Ms. Kinzer and Mr. Howell. Looks like we have a unanimous decision and a new superintendent. Go ahead now to your door and scratch off interim. And we do appreciate you taking third shift for our job. All right, accepting the revenue budget from county commissions, 2022 through 2023. Mr. Laconin, can you share some thoughts?
I amended the sales tax number down quite a bit, to match maintenance of effort plus $1, and it's reflected on your agenda. The actual funds that will come in will be unharmed. I'm good with this change, as much as I discussed it at the budget committee. Regardless of that, we'll still be in the same financial position regardless of what that number is. So, I would recommend to approve it.
Okay. Motion for Mr. Lindsay. Second for Mr. Howell. Mr. Moore.
I've always got to comment on something. I'll make this one brief tonight. I am always disappointed when we kind of have to go back and forth on some of these things. I would hope moving forward that we can get to a point where we're not having to bounce up against the MOU number year after year with the county commission. I understand the reasonings. I don't have to agree with it, but I can understand where they're coming from. But I will just say that it's going to be difficult, and we talked a lot tonight about growth and the things that we're facing, that we're going to have to get to a better place with our commission where we can understand that we can't have high expectations of this school district and continue to fund at the lowest possible legal level.
Thank you very much. I echo your words. The only way that leaving maintenance of effort, in my opinion, the same makes any sense is if you anticipate the county shrinking. And I can't see that. But then also some of our folks don't know what the MOU is. MOE. Go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, one more comment. We just approved a contract that I haven't budgeted for. We can either amend that afterwards, or we can amend that line item tonight on our budget proposal that we have here before us. I budgeted what the previous superintendent was compensated.
Okay. Can we do it at the June meeting?
Technically, you could do it in September if you wanted to, after the budget's approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that would not change the pay? Okay.
No, it would only cause a problem when we went over that budget. So, honestly, we would be good until probably sometime in 2023.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll let the next school board member take care of that. All right. We haven't voted yet on have not voted yet on the number from the county commission. Yeah, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Lindsay made the motion. Mr. Howell had the second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I believe we're ready to vote. All right, that item passes.
Well, I haven't, mine's like jammed or something, but I'm a yes if you want to mark it, Miss Shirley. I'm sorry.
All right, so that passes. The only other item on our agenda is to adjourn. All those in favor, stand up and leave.